What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. Hopefully you're doing well. Happy Saturday, y'all. It is the Saturday before the full moon that's coming in this next week in Gemini. If you're here for a live reading, you've found the right place. Hopefully you guys are doing well. You're enjoying your weekend. I know we've got a ton of people who are already in the chat. We'll let people kind of funnel in over the next couple minutes, and then we'll get right on to the readings. How's everybody doing? So let's see, what do we got going on here? We've got a number of level 3 people. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm a Western astrologer with an emphasis on working with the Sabian symbols as well as tarot. We alternate every other Saturday. We do live readings on the channel. That's donation based to help you guys out, to help you understand what's going on in the cosmos. Would love to take a look at your chart and see what you've got going on. Thank you guys. So many people signed up in advance. It made it so much easier. I really appreciate it. So let me let you know how this is going to go if you are new and you're just tuning in. Down here, you're going to see a QR code. So you can scan that QR code. It'll take you directly to the PayPal. We also probably have it somewhere pinned. It looks like right below, actually. You can see the pinned link if that QR code doesn't work. And it'll take you to the PayPal page for a donation. The donation that is for astrology readings. Whether you have one specific question about an area of your life, you have a question about a natal aspect or a transit, it's $40 donation. Although if you want to donate more, you're welcome to. We also do Synastry readings for $65, and that'll tell you a little bit about your relationship and your compatibility with another person. In order for me to pull up your chart, which I will be doing live on the channel as we go through these readings, I need some information from you. You will see this sometimes going intermittently across the screen, but we need your time, exact time, AM or PM, date, location, city, state, and country. So I'm here in America. If you can spell the month out, that'd be helpful, just so that way there's no confusion. That way I can cast your chart. I'm a Western astrologer, so we're going to be taking a look at your Western astrology, and I'm going to be looking at it from a Placidus perspective. Some of you guys watch my videos, you see me talk about whole sign, but when I do my one-on-one clients, I always use Placidus for timing. We always take level 3 people first, so I know we've got a number of people here. It looks like we've got Stephanie and Diana and Emma, so you guys are going to be first in line. Thank you guys for supporting Beyond the Veil and being a level 3 subscriber. If you guys are interested in supporting my channel, you like my horoscopes, my content, all the stuff that I'm putting out there, you can join one of my membership levels and you can support what I'm doing. And if you become a level 3 subscriber, you're also going to get a reading from me once a month. So it's ideal for those of you guys who want to sneak in, you have questions, you can use the membership towards a tarot or an astrology reading, whatever your heart desires. Let me say hello to everybody who's in the chat. Thank you guys so much. Everybody who's already donated and gotten in, I have all of your charts ready to go, so we can get rolling. I saw just another quantum wave pop in there. Thank you. I will add you onto my queue. What is this calendar about? We'll plug the calendar. It's right behind me. Maybe you've seen it in some of my videos. Lots of love went into this. It's the 2023 astrology calendar. It has all of the major transits for the year ahead, along with recommendations for each month. I do a profile on each and every one of the 12 signs and give you recommended herbs and incense and oils and rituals and all of that stuff. All the full moons are on there with the degrees and also all of the signs. So it's really helpful to kind of know what's going on a day-to-day basis with the astrology next year. What's up, Sonia? How is everybody doing? All right, so I'm going to give a bit of a roll call. Those of you guys who are new to doing these lives, I appreciate your patience. It does take a little bit of time. So outside of the level 3 people, I've got Jessica, Tonya, Jerome, Jaredy, Hugh, Brianna, Free Spirit, and Skyler. We have a number of people who are in the queue waiting. So if you guys know that you want to get a reading, make sure you get into the waiting line. You can scan and send that information. We're probably going to call last call within about 30 minutes because it takes a little bit of time to go through this. And just another quantum wave, you are at the end of that list. And just as a reminder, guys, we do have a full moon coming. So this is a good time to get a reading, especially if you are a mutable sign. So if you are Gemini, Virgo, Sag, Pisces, Sun, Moon, or Rising, especially if you have any placements between, I would say, 14 and 18 degrees of the mutable sign, especially if you have a personal planet around 16 degrees of Gemini, This full moon is going to be extra impactful for you, so go ahead and get in the queue. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into looking at the first chart. So we've got Stephanie. Stephanie beat everybody to the punch. What's up, girl? She said, hey, Candace, I'd like my monthly reading. Just started to look into a home mortgage approval process today. I would like to know what I can expect. I have a job interview this coming week. Meanwhile, I've got clients for my lash makeup business. You have a good feeling about the interview. P.S. I live with my father and it's nuts here. Saturn return. Thank you for your question. Okay, so a couple things. One is for you as a Libra rising. Okay, I know you're the last degree of Libra rising. Just a heads up, right? You are going to be having a Mercury retrograde that'll be taking place at the end of December and it'll go into January of 2023. And that Mercury retrograde will be in Capricorn. So for Libra risings in general, changes and reworking or reorganizing, rethinking your home and your living space is kind of on the agenda, right? Technically, your Mercury retrograde will be happening fully in your third. So it's going to be things like documents, you know, thinking about the process of movement in general is connected to the third house. I'm a little iffy here. Here's why. You've got Mars going retrograde in your 8th house, which deals with joint resources, debt, and loans. So Mars usually is about your ability to move forward on something, right? So Mars doesn't have the most strength when it's retrograde. Mars in your 8th house in Gemini is about rethinking the way that you look at joint resources. It may also have you thinking about, going and doing some research into mortgages, loans, banking, debt consolidations, anything like that. The thing that I'm noticing here is that Mars is in a square to Neptune. So Neptune in the 5th house can indicate, okay, you're self-employed. Obviously, congrats on trying to get a job, but it can be challenging when it comes to the qualification process with Mars in your 8th house square Neptune. And you're going to have to kind of find a way in terms of documents and paperwork to navigate what could be a really tricky paper trail that you'd have to create to kind of show that you have proof of backing in regards to work, right? And then 2, you're in your Saturn's return. Saturn is moving forward. It's going to be moving forward through your 4th house. Technically, it's not really going to be leaving your Placidus 5th house until closer to the beginning of 2024. So your Saturn return is ending, but you have Saturn at 29 degrees. So you really want to wait until Saturn comes into conjunction with natal Saturn before you decide to drop anchor and buy a house. Now, I'm not saying this to keep you from doing it. I'm just letting you know that it can be a little sticky, a little tricky. When Saturn is retrograding, right? When it comes back into your Placidus 4th house, which will be, down the road. If you look at it here on the outer wheel, Saturn is going to come into conjunction with your natal Saturn, and that's going to be right around, you are going to see Saturn go into your 5th house, which is Pisces. Personally, and this is not like, you don't need an astrologer to tell you this, but be very, very, very careful with anything in regards to loans right now. Okay, like the whole thing is about to implode. Everything that's going on with the financial market, real estate and interest rates and all of these things, like basically there's further breakdown coming. So I feel like the Mars retrograde, which may potentially put you in a situation where you're like, okay, I need more savings, or I didn't quite get the interest rate that I wanted, could actually be a saving grace, and it can keep you from making a move that's not ideal, especially Saturn when it's in the late degrees of Aquarius. I know that it's like hectic and chaotic right now, but I feel like it's a better time to focus on saving with Mars retrograde. It's also a better time during the Mercury retrograde to figure out how you can drum up some more business, be focusing on planning a move, what areas you want to go to, and or be talking to relatives, because you're going to have Mercury that's going to go retrograde in your 3rd. So it means that you're either looking at other neighborhoods, you're talking to other family members about ways to be able to expand your home or your living situation, and you may come up with a creative solution to either find a way to possibly look into purchasing with another person, or be talking about possibly moving and doing something temporary just to get you through until you're ready to buy a home. Ownership specifically is the 2nd house. So it's interesting that Mars, being the ruler of your 2nd house, is retrograde in the 8th, and it's saying that you are prepared to start doing the saving process and you're willing to take the loan on but it's going to take a little bit longer for this to happen. Down the road, when I look at next year, there's a couple really kind of sweet spots that you may have in regards to things actually making it more likely that you can make a change in regards to your living situation, and you may have some kind of support, whether this is through a mortgage or this is through the support of another person. One will be when Mars comes into a trine with your natal Saturn, so that's going to be right around the second half of March of 2023. When you see your second house lord align with Saturn, it might be that it's like, okay, now you can make that change. Granted, I think the other thing you might be considering is like looking at other areas that may be further away, but they might be a little bit more affordable. 2 is going to be when Venus, your chart ruler, goes into the 8th house. It starts coming into a trine with Saturn. And then you have a Mercury retrograde in your 7th. So that's going to be happening in May. And that can be about when you're like ready to sit down and find somebody to help you with the process of being able to be like, okay, now we can help qualify for this or for that or what have you. And like a Mercury retrograde for Libra rising or any planets going through Taurus, even though it's not quite in your Placidus, 8th house is definitely going to be reworking anything in regards to being able to kind of drum up more money. I also feel like you're going to have more bang for your buck. Like I've talked to probably 24 Libra risings over the last like month or two, and everybody's in the same situation where they're like, I have to move, but we don't quite feel ready to purchase something, or we need to do something that's kind of temporary. So when in doubt, just hold is my advice. I would also like to see planets come fully into Gemini or Libra before you make a physical home change. So that gets easier for you in like May, June. We also see that happening when Mars goes into Libra, which is going to be in the fall of next year. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a little bit more about buying time. When we get to July of 2023, you're going to see the north and the south node that are going to come into a square with Pluto. So that does kind of suggest to me that you're like, okay, I don't have a choice. I really have to make a change. I can't wait too long though. Things are hard at home. When will things fall through with the markets? You're going to have more spending power when you're having more support to, you know, your second house lord. And the truth is that next year, Saturn is going to come into an opposition with Mars. So that seems to suggest that the way of being able to navigate the difficult situation of figuring out how to kind of afford a better living situation, personally, I would recommend either considering living with a friend temporarily or doing something short term just to get you through. Probably after that July period, once Saturn starts retrograding back to your 4th house and you start receiving some support from planets that are moving through Libra and Scorpio, like making a purchase is going to be much better for you the second half of next year. So I would advise you with Pluto square the ascendant and the descendant, some of the transits you have going on, try not to be so black and white about it. Try to be more like, okay, I'm going to buy when I know I have the financial ability to do so. I don't have to buy yet. I can be saving, or what ways can I be able to make changes in my living situation without feeling like I just have to purchase? Because yes, you will be able to make a purchase, especially with Pluto coming into the late degrees of Capricorn and it's trining your Venus. But believe it or not, it's not as simple or as clean cut as A or B, where it's like I live with my family or I move. Part of what's going to happen with Pluto squaring your ascendant or your descendant is putting the emphasis on relationships and partnerships. 7th house, that's also going to be about clients. So you're going to see more clients are going to come in, but you'll see that there's going to be situations happening in relationships where you're going to be possibly going back and forth with somebody and being like, okay, well, you know, you live here, I live there, I have to move, what are we doing? That's what Pluto is going to ultimately end up doing when it squares both of the ascendant and the descendant. So there's some life events based off of this chart that have not even happened yet. That is also going to radically change and transform the way that you look at your living situation. And personally, you're not going to have to wait for very long. That might start happening as early as April and May when you have Jupiter in the North Node and eclipses start happening in your 7th house, trine your 3rd. Where at the very least, you have more clients and more business coming in, which will give you the freedom to feel like you can do more. But at the very most, it might potentially bring a very significant business partnership or a romantic partnership, which opens the lines of communication to your 3rd house to start talking about moving or movement, right? And I'm going to tell you this will happen. As a Libra rising, that is 0 degrees. When I had these very same transits, that's exactly how this played out. And it's not me telling you you have to rely on somebody else. I'm just going to tell you other clients and people show up to kind of help the financial situation. But it's definitely going to be a person, especially with the North Node and Jupiter hanging out in your 7th, that's going to be like, okay, so move. You know, what's the problem? So it's really putting the pressure on you to really listen to the Uranus, the North Node, the Jupiter transits all going through your 7th house. That eclipse that's coming also around April 19th of 2023 is right on your descendant. So likely these things are going to be setting up just after that particular eclipse. But I would be very weary, and this is for anybody right now, right? Venus and Mercury, which can be about talking about money and resources and documents and paperwork, is in a square to Neptune, and it's also in an opposition to Mars, retrograde. So a lot of things sound really good right now. I would advise a lot of people to be very careful and to put off any major purchases this week, because it's not clear in the cosmos right now in terms of what you're agreeing to and what you're signing off for. Be very, very careful. A lot of this is going to make sense for everybody once we get into the beginning of next year. Right after the holidays, Mercury is going to turn retrograde, right around the 29th of December, and it will conjunct Pluto and Venus, which means the truth is going to start coming out about the crisis in the banking situations, about issues with home mortgages and loans and interest rates. In a way, they're almost just trying to triage the situation and smooth it over until we get to after the holidays, and then we're going to start hearing from big business how many layoffs are going to be happening, how much issues we're having also with like the Fed and interest rates. Like, trust me on this, guys. Be very, very careful right now. Now is not the time to be making some of these decisions. But Mercury retrogrades are great times to be thinking about practical temporary solutions. So maybe it's a matter of being like, okay, Mercury retrograde, is there other friends, other family, somebody who's offering a temporary space or something I could be looking at just to get me through from point A to point B until we get about 6 months down the road and I feel more comfortable making a change, okay? Hopefully that's helpful for you. Circle back and let us know what happens. I know the Saturn return is particularly challenging in the 4th house, especially in relation to one of the parents, and there is something karmically going on that's kind of keeping you bound to home to be dealing with a parent situation or also a home situation. So it's annoying, but once you get to the other side, you'll realize why Saturn kept you there, and most likely it's going to be to cover your ass financially. Good luck. We've got Deanna. We've also got Emma. So let me pull up Deanna. I know you had questions about Synastry with your dude. I think you said you spent Thanksgiving in Ireland. I bet it was chilly there. I've got your chart, obviously, the Leo rising, Sun in Capricorn, and your moon in Libra. And then I've got your guide's chart on the outside. That was for June 13th, 1973 at 2 a.m. And that was in Limerick, Ireland. Hopefully that is correct. So you're asking questions about Synastry. Chilly and beautiful, nice. Anything in particular you have questions about? Just a couple things that I'm noticing, you know, putting the charts on top of each other. You've got some really nice aspects that I'm kind of digging. Off the bat, you know, just the fact that he has a Pisces rising, and I look at that his Mars is in your 8th house. That really is a very transformative and deep and very passionate kind of relationship that you would have with each other. Moving in marriage, yeah. So the other thing is like, you know, the North Node is conjunct your Venus by the same degree. It's off by about maybe 10 solar arc minutes. So the North Node in astrology talks about where we have growth or what we're learning about, where we grow and come into our dharma. So for his North Node to be in your 5th house, automatically that really expands on the heart space, romance, anything in regards to creativity, traveling for fun. But it's Capricorn, so it's like being serious about love or being serious about commitment. So that in itself makes it feel like it's like a meant to be type of relationship, very whimsical, very fairy tale like. So that's good for relationships in general. You've also got the fact that his Sun and his Saturn, which sit in your 11th house, which can be an indication of not just somebody who is like a partner, but also like a friend, like a best friend. and somebody who's in alignment when it comes to like goals, and like they really understand how important it is for you to be able to achieve certain things or socialize or what have you. So this is also a good indication that there's a foundation to the relationship. It goes beyond just like intimacy and like a physical connection. I like that that sits in your 11th house and it trines your 7th, because it tells me that there's some free-flowing energy that's very communicative about what your goals are when it comes to relationships, and what you're hoping to achieve. And you've got his Venus and his Mercury that are in your 11th house. So friends are going to like him. It's interesting because oppositions can definitely be very magnetic. So where he has his North Node on your Venus, he has his Venus and his Mercury in opposition to your Venus. So you guys may just have difference of preferences. You know, Venus in Capricorn is not as affectionate, a little bit, you know, takes a little bit longer to kind of warm up to people. And it can be very traditional and very strong, both feminine, Cancer and Capricorn. But the Venus in Cancer and the Mercury in Cancer can be a little bit more soft and receptive and nurturing. So you guys just have different preferences, right? Like Capricorn can definitely be a little bit more practical, and Cancer can be a little bit more nurturing and a little bit more emotional. So I'd say just take into consideration that you guys have different love languages, and also he can be very, very sensitive. Even though he's a Gemini, he's very sensitive with that placement. He also, because his South Node is conjunct Venus, has a life where he's like, his end all be all is not about relationships. If he ends up having a relationship, that's great, that's awesome. But Venus South Node is generally people who aren't here to learn about relationships. They bring in a strong sense of being able to socialize and knowing how to be a good partner. But some of these people sometimes can be unfulfilled. And what I notice about him is that he's also got Venus square Pluto. So he's had situations in his life where it's like relationships went sour or things didn't work out. A lot of that is because he's learning to kind of actively clear karma in this lifetime, and that there needs to be lots of change and transformation through relationships. His Pluto is within 9 degrees of your North Node. So that also says that he's helping you really focus on stability and security, and building on your self-worth and your self-esteem. So he can provide you with something really solid and something really important when it comes to relationships, finances, money, all of that stuff. By sign, his Jupiter belongs to your 7th house as well. So like, let's say if you were a Leo rising whole sign, his Jupiter would be in your 7th. So that's also really great. I mean, Jupiter can be an indication of husbands. Having Jupiter being associated with the 6th house, being on the cusp of the 7th also says that there may be a sense of him serving you or helping you, especially with like getting things done, or helping you like around the house or like little errands and stuff like that. His moon is in Scorpio, so that's hanging out in your 4th house. And obviously Scorpio energy in general, right? It's not the easiest energy. And you've got a ton of placements, or an angle, I guess we should say, in Scorpio. So having somebody's moon in your 4th house makes it feel like it's home and it's family, like you like being in each other's home, and there's going to be the sense of him gravitating and kind of seeing you as home or wanting to spend time in your home. But the Scorpio moon is not easy. I think it's cool because it sextiles your Capricorn placements. It's also going to be making positive aspects to your Venus. So I mean, you can handle it. I think you can handle it, being that you've got Uranus in the 4th house. Moon Uranus contacts. Do you ever feel like you can kind of like read each other's like emotions? Like, do you feel like in some situations maybe he has said like, oh, I'm too moody for some people, or I have too much emotional depth, or I'm afraid to open up, and like you're like, that's fine, that doesn't affect me, that doesn't faze me. That's a really nice contact. I mean, you have moon conjunct Pluto, you know, so I feel like that's very similar to having a Scorpio moon, having a lot of emotional depth and being open to communicating your fears and your feelings. So I definitely feel like, you know, a lot of these transits that are coming for him, not just Saturn squaring his moon, but also the fact that Uranus and Jupiter are going to oppose his moon over this next year, which tells me that he's going to have a profound shift in terms of his home and where he's living, and, you know, what's going on with his emotional kind of like roots, and lots of physical changes. What else do you got going on here? You have Saturn sextile, let's see. Your Saturn doesn't sextile his moon. Your Saturn squares his Neptune. Yeah, I mean, that's the long and short of some of the bigger aspects. I would say, like, even though he's a Gemini, the fact that he's got Sun conjunct Saturn tells me that he is very serious, or that he takes himself seriously, or that he's like very responsible. So that is cool for a Capricorn, because generally Capricorns and Geminis, I'm not going to say they don't jive, but like usually that's not the easiest mix. But I feel like because his North Node factors in with your Venus, and because he may have this more kind of like serious or mature kind of demeanor, you really like that about him, and that's what attracts you to him in general. But yeah, I think the other thing is just the Lilith contacts. I mean, he has, you know, his Lilith, his Sun and his Saturn conjunct your Lilith, so that seems to kind of indicate like a very intoxicating draw that you have to him that you just can't kind of let go of. And it's mutual because, you know, he has his Lilith conjuncture Mercury. So there's a sense of like not wanting to stop seeing each other, not wanting to stop talking to each other. And it's got a very strong pull because you've got his Mars that's in a square, both to your Lilith and his Lilith. So lots of passion and feeling very drawn to one another. I'll say right now in terms of his life, I mean, it's high adventure, I would imagine, having Mars going retrograde over his Sun and over his Saturn. It is in, you know, direct opposition to his MC. So it's kind of like him being like, I don't know where my career is going. I'm more focused on where I'm living. I'm more focused on my relationship because it is making all of these aspects to his Mars and also his Sun and his Saturn, which is very close to his 4th house. So there can be this feeling of my work has to change in order for my home life to change, in order for my relationships to change. So just knowing that, you know, he's a Pisces rising, Saturn is going to be, you know, coming into Pisces. So it's like, it'll be 2 years before it's crossing his ascendant, right? And Neptune's conjunct his Mars right now. So he's like, I'm really dreamy. I'm really hopeful for the future. I don't really entirely know where I'm going to be working or how I'm going to be making money. I just know that I have a vision for where I'm going. So life is probably feeling a little topsy-turvy for him at the moment. That's what I'm anticipating. And knowing that you're getting ready to have Saturn come through your 7th house, and you're going to have your Saturn opposition. I think I've told you before, it's kind of like a timing thing, right? When Saturn comes into opposition with your natal Saturn, this can be a situation where you're like, you know, like you can't do the back and forth anymore, or there's going to be a definitive decision. So that way you guys can really figure out, you know, what it is that you're building in terms of your life. And just knowing that, you know, Jupiter and Uranus are on track for a collision, basically on your midheaven. The astrology seems to suggest that there's a profound shift for you as well in regards to your public image, whether that's what work you're doing or whether or not you identify as being somebody who's married. That's definitely kind of in the cards for you over the next 18 months. But yeah, his life is very changeable at the moment. So just try to be patient with him is the best advice I can give you. And I love the fact that, you know, his natal Pluto in his 7th house, he's coming into Pluto trine Pluto. So it's a really powerful time for him to be committing to relationships and being willing to open up and talk about commitment and marriage. It's a really cool thing. Definitely take a look at your guys' composite chart, or you can come back and take a look at that for another reading. But I think that's also something that I would consider taking a look at, because Synastry is like putting 2 people in a room and watching them. The composite chart is going to tell you realistically what's going to happen, how that relationship is going to unfold. But you know me, I'm pretty hypercritical, so I definitely do think that this is a good match. Hopefully, you guys get to figure out where you're going and what you're doing. Let me know. Let me pull up Emma. You are so welcome. All right, so we have Emma here. Where was she? Here we go. What's up, Emma? Hey, Candace, can I please get my December reading for the full moon? So I've got you here, March 1876. Capricorn rising. Obviously, you've got your Sun in Pisces, and this is going to be a full moon that is in Gemini. So this is going to be in your natal 6th house. Here we go. So that's going to be taking place right around December 7th. So what are full moons? Full moons are climax points. These are fulfillment points, okay? So for everybody listening, if you guys aren't already aware, this is a really impactful full moon. The full moon is going to be within minutes of a conjunction to Mars. So the day before, the day of, the day after, pretty much the 6th through the 9th is going to be very, very, very heated, right? Because Mars is about heat and it's a retrograde Mars. So it's about emotional kind of eruptions. You know, the 6th house, it is your workspace. It is your coworkers. It is your health. It also deals with your pets. It can be dealing with some kind of health ailment. Sometimes the 6th house is also connected to accidents. Now, Mars is strongly tied to this, and Mars in your chart is associated with your whole sign 4th house home. So to me, this looks like a lot of like organizing, cleaning house, taking care of something, you know, labeling things, reorganizing, moving stuff around. It can also be relating to, you know, like repairs around the home or helping like a relative or a family member in regard to a health related matter. You are going to have this in opposition to your natal Neptune, which is the ruler of the 4th house. So I could see this materialize as being like, you know, I was painting something or I was fixing something and I left something on the floor. And then as I'm, you know, walking away, I didn't realize it was still wet and I have an accident. Be very careful with liquids, right? Equally, this can be about feeling like a little bit more emotionally sensitive, because the opposition to Neptune can definitely stem through the 6th house of having like illnesses. And Mars can be about cutting, burning, anything in regards to heat, rash, or fevers. And the opposition to Neptune can be saying that that can be coming up because of something that you didn't see or some emotion that you didn't process. This is especially true because it's going to be squaring your natal Mercury. So to me, it almost seems like it's a day where you're like, man, I wish I didn't go into the office. The positive side of this is that if you're looking for a new job, you can find one. If you're looking to get back into the gym, if you're looking to get results from a physical exam, if you're looking to hire somebody to help you, these are times where you can kind of sort some of this stuff out. But for the most part, a mutable T-square between your midheaven, Neptune, your natal Mercury, and the 6th house makes me feel inclined to tell you, be very careful when you're moving around, whether you're just walking or if you're in your car, you know, if you're walking across the street, just look around, observe everything. If you work in an office space, you might find that this is just a period where you've got coworkers that are a little distraught or people who are a little bit agitated. It's very unlikely that this is not going to affect you, right? So one other thing I would say is like, take a look at the Mars retrograde. So for everybody, this is important because Mars is having this full moon conjunct the moon, and it's in degrees that it's already gone through. And Mars has been kind of making some of these aspects really since the better part of September. So if you look at going back in time, the last time that Mars was at 16 degrees, it can be going back over things that have already been taking place since around September 20th, right? So you have to really think back. Mars in Gemini is also very mental. So I'm wondering if this is you being like, I need to make more time for getting my, you know, to-do list done. I need to make the time to, you know, get out and go for a walk and blow off some steam. Finding an outlet is what's really important, I think. So I'm wondering like how it's going to be showing you where it can't just be like all work and no play, that there needs to be a sense of having more physical fitness or changes in your diet or changes in where you're working. To help kind of diffuse some stress with that square to your Mercury. So you want to go back and you want to take a look at what was going on then. Obviously, back then you had a Mercury retrograde in your 10th. So there was a sense of being like, okay, you know, things are changing at work, or, you know, I'm thinking about what kind of work I want to do or what I want to get into. So it's going to have some similar flavor to that. And also the fact that the ruler of this particular full moon is Mercury, right? And Mercury is in Capricorn. So you've got Mercury that's coming into your ascendant sign, and then you're going to have the full moon. So it's something about your body. It's something about your habits. It's something about the way that you think or communicate with people. It can also be that you're feeling a little under the weather, or you're not sure how to communicate, or you're trying to find a way to communicate with people without getting frustrated. So likely it's going to be like one of those situations, but definitely be mindful of communication. And sometimes like perfectionism can kind of come up, because it is opposing your ascendant and it's in a square to Mercury. So there can be a sense of kind of nitpicking or people nitpicking you at work and then you getting kind of emotional and reactive to this. Emma says, I have a long to-do list at the moment and I'm on the cusp of getting a job. Cool. In an industry I love. Communication has been challenging lately. So that Moon Mars can be like, great, here's the contract. When can you start? And you're like, I wasn't planning on starting yet. It can also be that you're being pushed to communicate better and like negotiate something or explain what you do or you don't have time for. So I would say if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed, you know, the Mercury retrograde is an opportunity for you to kind of make adjustments to the way that you communicate with people. I'm also looking at Pluto coming into opposition with Saturn. So there is a need to be really kind of direct and matter of fact about what your bottom line is in terms of your resources, what you need to be paid, what benefits you're looking for, and really ensuring that you're getting everything that you need. And it can be as simple as like, hey, I can't start yet, or I can't work, you know, 12-hour days, or I have, you know, schedule limitations, or can I start after the new year? And also be asking questions about benefits, especially like documents and things that you might sign pertaining to like health insurance or other benefits might come up as well. But definitely pay attention to that to-do list. You might feel like you need to get some of that done before you start working, okay? Good luck. Those of you guys who are waiting for your reading, thank you for your patience. We're going to call last call in a couple minutes. I got another 2 people that popped in really quick, so we'll give you guys another like 5 minutes if you want to jump in. I'm going to plug these other 2 charts in, and then I'll start working through the list of people that I have. Appreciate your patience. You're welcome, Emma. Good luck. Happy birthday, Miss Lashes. Or Miss Dro City. Sorry, I'm dyslexic reading that backwards. Happy solar return. You snuck in there. Let's see. So that was in Torrance. Thank you, Mystic Road. I'm going to go through and let everybody know who I have in what order. I have not even gotten into people quite yet. What name would that be under if it's not under Mystic Road? Tonya, I got you. How do you join and be a member? You should be able to go to my channel and you can go to community, I think, and you can join, or maybe we can get you a link. All right, so let's see if we've got everybody before we call last call. Cool. All right, so here's who I have. In order. We have got Jennifer, Tonya, Jerome, Derdeli, Hugh, Brianna, Free Spirit, Skyler, Mistro City, and K. Marcelo. Am I saying that right? I don't want to mispronounce, but that's who I got. So we're going to wrap up. We're going to go ahead and close the readings, and let's go ahead and get into everybody else that we have. We're going to go ahead and start with Jennifer. Oh, and I got you another quantum wave. Thank you. I've got you. You're the only super chat, so it doesn't pop up. But yes, you are going to be thrown in right towards the end. So I'll give you guys a heads up when we're coming up to your reading. Okay, so Jennifer O, 9/16/97, 7:50 a.m. Havana, Cuba. Victoria, it's under another name. What is the name that you booked it under? Yep, I got you. So yeah, you're on my list. Yep. You're going to be the next 2 readings up. So Jennifer, Tonya, and then Victoria. All right, so for Jennifer, her question was, when/how will my finances improve? So you're a Leo rising, your sun is in Virgo in the 2nd house, and your moon is in Pisces. The finances are always looked at through either the ruler of the 2nd house, which in your case is Mercury, and transits that are affecting both the 2nd and the 8th house, because the 2nd house is your spending power, money that you have. The 8th house is other people's resources and your entanglements with others. So there's a couple things that I see going on here, okay? One is, good question. It's a really good timing, especially considering the fact that you're getting ready to have Saturn enter into your 8th house, which is about debt, joint resources, shared resources, inheritances, taxes, all of that stuff. So over the next 2.5 years, this is going to be more of an emphasis where you're focusing on, you know, getting out of debt, paying things off, your relationship that you have with other people, all of that stuff. She's saying, I'm a Libra rising. Okay, I've got you September 16th, 1997, 7:50 a.m., and this is in Cuba. That's what my software is telling me, so let me double check and let me pull up another software. Sometimes it does this with other time zones in other countries, so give me 1 second. Let me just double check. And you have looked at this through Western, September 16th, 1997, 7:50 a.m. Yeah, it must just be like a software thing, so I apologize because it's definitely coming up as a different time zone. So give me 1 second here. This is why we check. There we go. Maybe that was it. It seems to have reset on me. Apologies. There we go. Thank you. Appreciate it. So Libra rising, 0 degrees. Okay. Take back what I said. So you're Libra rising. You have got Venus in the 2nd house and your Sun in Virgo in the 12th. So Venus is technically the ruler of your 2nd house. So what's been going on recently? You had an eclipse there not too long ago. That was right on top of your Mars, which has definitely brought the theme of spending and your habits and your resources into focus. So a solar eclipse that you had at the end of October in your 2nd house is actually really positive. It's setting the stage for being able to bring in more money. You just don't see it quite yet. Then you had a full moon lunar eclipse conjunct Uranus in your 8th house. So it's definitely kind of getting your feelings up and kind of tossed in when it comes to your joint resources. And Saturn has been in a square. I'm wondering, are you self-employed? Do you have your own business? I'm looking at Saturn, which is kind of straddling the square to both Mars and also Uranus in your 8th house. So that can make you feel like your happiness is very much affected based off of the money that you have and the money that you owe, or vice versa. When do we see more growth in terms of your resources? When you see a positive transit to your natal Venus or involving your natal Venus or Mars. So to be honest with you, Mars in the 2nd house likes to spend money, okay? That's just how it is. It kind of burns a hole in your pocket. So what's going on right now with Saturn is Saturn is finally coming out of what's been about a year and a half of squaring your Mars. So you're going to feel Saturn square your Mars up until about the end of December, and then it's going to start moving away. So what it's trying to get you to focus on is finding ways to have happiness without physical things or without spending money. So one way that you can do that is by making a shift in regards to just feeling like you need to physically buy things. You might also kind of cut back on spending. Second house can be food or things in regards to travel because you have Mars at a 21. Saturn through your 5th house is also trying to get you to think about taking chances. So you may also find that you're more willing to start looking at, well, do I want to have a side hustle? Do I want to try to make kind of like passive income? And it can also be a transit that talks about learning more about investments in the markets. I can tell you that there's positive things that are coming in regards to making more resources, but this is going to be after the South Node leaves your Venus. So you're not quite out of the woods yet. When the South Node comes into conjunction with Venus, it can be a time where still you're feeling like money is a little scarce, or there can be this feeling of willing to give something away. So really it's working on you December, January, February in cutting back. Specifically, Venus in the 2nd house is like not buying luxury goods, not spending a lot of money on beauty routines, hair, nails, all of that stuff. Obviously the things that Libra risings really like, but it's trying to kind of cut that back. And then you're going to see that the South Node will sit on your Venus. So it's the tightest maybe until the end of February. And then you're going to have something interesting happen. Your chart ruler Venus goes into the 8th house. So it tells me that money is coming back to you, or that you're getting like a refund on something, or you're going to have like somebody who's going to offer you something, or you're possibly going to be in a situation where there's going to be an inheritance, or there's going to be like a insurance related claim that's going to pay out. Venus in Taurus is good because that's where it's comfortable, and the fact that it's going to touch on the North Node and then it's going to come into conjunction with Uranus tells me that there is going to be like a payoff period pretty much from the end of March all the way until Jupiter enters into your 8th house. There will be an eclipse there at the end of April, and you're making more money. But here's the deal, okay? 8th house talks about an exchange. So it can be something like you take some savings, you put it into a stock, you wait for the stock to run, the stock runs in the spring, and then you cash out on it. It's about what you put in and what you get, or it's about something that you lose, but it ends up being a gain. So having like the sun and eclipses and Jupiter going into your 8th house tells me promotions, benefits, getting some kind of like payback, but it can also be dealing with wealthier clients, feeling like you're getting a bigger bonus because you've produced very well. It's looking really, really, really good for you in May. At the same time, I'm watching Uranus come into an opposition with Mars, and so it does tell me that your financial spending and your financial situations change very suddenly because of another person, right? So the other person can be your boss, it can be your company, it could be that you meet somebody who's just very financially secure. Mars is the ruler of your 7th house. So there can also be a little bit of like squabbles and back and forth over money and resources, who pays for what, things like that. That will be a theme, okay? I also have Mars in the 2nd house, and I remember when Uranus made oppositions to Mars, it was a lot of not conflicts over money, but values. I want you to think about values, especially because Venus in Scorpio is very passionate. So I am anticipating what's going to happen is if somebody owes you something and they don't pay you, or if somebody makes a promise and they don't come through, you're going to be like, you owe me this, especially with Jupiter being in your 8th house. To me, it looks like they will be contractually bound. So if you have something in writing that you're supposed to be getting, a review, or that you're going to be given X amount of time off or more, sick time or whatever, you're going to have something bound. Another option that I would say, because Jupiter rules technically your whole sign 3rd, is that this is about bringing in money through something that can be through writing or an online business, or creating something that's going to be about information or learning, or some kind of transactions with people in other places. So it might be a good idea to start considering what little things can I be doing that could be self-sustainable, that can be bringing in passive income, like a website or something like that would be really positive, because by the time you get to 2024, both Jupiter and Uranus are making an opposition to Mars. You're making more money because you've got something that people want and it's in demand. And it can be something relating to information or travel, knowledge. But I'm really keeping an eye on that 21. It makes me feel like there's legal documents or legal agreements relating to you and other people. The other way that I can look at this is please make sure that you're insured, whether it's health-wise or through, business insurance if you need business insurance, or if it means that, you have car insurance, because with that opposition to your Mars, it could literally be a situation where, obviously, touch wood, there's an insurance situation where, there's something that happens and somebody owes you something, or somebody has to pay you something because you have to sue them. With Jupiter and Uranus in your 8th house, that can definitely be a thing. So I'd say definitely take that into consideration, because that does seem to be like something that can be building as you're getting into 2024. But for the most part, once you get outside of the South Node transits, you're getting into like March, April, May of next year, it's going to be better, but the 8th house is teaching you where other people are willing to give to you. So where you're going to be receiving from other people. Specifically, Jupiter ruling your 3rd could be like neighbors who are more generous. It could be an inheritance that you get from an extended family member, like a cousin or an uncle or an aunt or a sibling. It can also be that you have some kind of contract where somebody says, hey, I want to work with you. If you hit this amount in sales, this is what I'm going to give you back. So really hear me on that, especially because you have Pluto in your 3rd house. Like, you need something more solid than just a verbal agreement. You need to actually have something written. And that might be something you're really thinking about over these next few months as Jupiter is coming into a trine with your natal Pluto. But all roads lead to 2024 when you have Jupiter and Uranus in your 8th house and you're making money and it's coming in, and it's because you learn to say, hey, I need support, I need help, right? We know you got Mars and Venus in your 2nd house. We know that you're a producer. I know that you can make money. I know that you can support yourself, but it's about kind of turning the tables and being like, okay, but I need other people to kind of see my value as well. And they need to be investing in me rather than me being the one who's like the workhorse and being willing to kind of keep up with the status quo. As planets go through your 8th house, you can actually increase your salary, increase your, the payments that you're getting from other people as well. So for a lot of Libra risings, these eclipses are teaching you to ask for more, or to band together with another person and find ways to be able to drum up business and have clients, or have another partner that you're starting some kind of a business for, right? But it's going to get easier. You'll definitely see this with the eclipses in the spring. You're going to be having eclipses, full moon lunar eclipses that are going to be taking place in Scorpio. So look for that. Actually, yeah, there's going to be a Scorpio and there's going to be an Aries one. So the Aries one is setting the stage for right on the cusp of your 8th house. Write down April 19th. That eclipse is going to be on the cusp of your 8th house. As much as I hate to say this for many Libra risings, an eclipse in your 8th house and then the square to Pluto seems to insinuate there is some legacy payment coming. So it can be that there is an inheritance that's given to you, or there is something that is passed down to you, which can be very valuable. It's not limited to just money. It can be physical objects, or it can be property as well. Okay. Saturn's coming for your moon over these next 2 years. So that's about you focusing on your roots, your home, your family, your responsibility. There's going to be more of a need for you to be looking at your emotions, more of a need also for you to be taking a look at the health of the mother, right? Really hear me on that, because you have the moon conjunct the South Node. You're born on a full moon. So you don't just have Saturn coming in conjunction with your moon, with your South Node, and it's going to oppose your sun. So there is definitely going to be a lot of like, where am I supposed to be working? What is my purpose? Paying attention to your mental health, but also the health of the mother. South Node moon in the 6th. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Jennifer. Sending good vibes. I love my life. It's going to be fine. A lot of the things that you have coming through the 8th house is support from other people. All right, good luck. We have got Tonya. Tonya says, 4:15:68 to 2:40 p.m., Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm living full-time on the road. We'll be going back to regular remote work in January. Where should I focus my energy this month? Setting up my own business, travel, art, no focus, just go with the flow. Learning? Good questions. All right, so you're asking about what you should be doing the month ahead. My goodness, everything is kind of in flux and it's in transition in your life right now, right? You've got planets that are moving through Sagittarius, so it's about kind of getting grounded, feeling homey and secure and emotionally comfortable. You've got Mars going retrograde in your 10th, so you're like, I don't really feel like working right now. You know, I'm good. I'm gonna sidestep that a little bit. And you also have squares taking place with Neptune and Jupiter in your 7th house. I have to say, being on the road, very Sag in the 4th house, just kind of going with the flow is definitely amazing. My mind is like boggled with the fact that you've got Jupiter and Neptune in opposition to your Virgo placement. So there's definitely this dynamic between what you are feeling, what you need, and others. And then the square to Mars and planets in the 4th house. Like, this is a time where if you can coast and you just want to really pay attention to your emotions, that's what I would recommend. I don't really get the impression that there isn't going to be some action though, okay? Because this full moon that's coming up, that's going to be taking place in Gemini, it's in your 10th house of work. It's going to square your Pluto. It's going to oppose planets in your 4th house. So I'm wondering, is it going to be a situation where it's like you get news that, you know, there's changes at work and they're, you know, letting you know, hey, we had this thing come up. Is it possible you can help us with this thing? Can you respond to this email? Can you have this meeting? Blah, blah, blah. Even though in your mind, you're like, I'm not working. Okay. 2, I also feel for you personally that as we come into the end of December, okay, for Virgo risings, Mercury will be going retrograde. So Mercury is going to be going retrograde in your whole sign 5th. So here we find Mercury moving into your 5th house, which is matters of the heart. Thinking about happiness, joy, younger people, having fun, self-employment, creativity, children, romance. These are all the themes that we hear of the 5th house, but for Virgo risings, you take these things very seriously. It's like you almost need to actually make the time to have fun, make the time to interact with romantic partners, make the time to have, you know, like date night or paint night, whatever. I feel like when Mercury goes retrograde, because it's your chart ruler, it's something you want to be really present with. So I'm watching this like storyline kind of play out where Mercury is going to come really close to Pluto, where there's going to be a profound emotional shift. It's going to go retrograde in conjunction to Venus. And I think it's going to be like you really reflecting at the end of the year going, what's going to make me happy? What does my heart need? What does my inner child need? Am I still open to the idea of being able to work for myself, have a hobby? Do I need to think more about, you know, my children or romantic partners? Am I open to these things? So there's something here that's getting ready to kind of be reworked. Very powerful, because it's also going to be making some trines to your natal Uranus and also Pluto. So you'll find that through inspiration, it almost like resurrects something in you and opens something and awakens something in you personally. Tonya says, I have to get set up with a consulting firm so I can go back to an old job as a consultant, trying to avoid them, but we'll have to interact with them some. Yeah, okay. So totally fine. Expect that on the full moon. It might be a little aggravating, or there are people that are like, we need you to do this. We need you to do this now. And if you don't have romantic partners, it might have you thinking about it. If you're not looking to be doing that, then it's just going to be something that's like a hobby or something that's going to be feeling more fulfilling. But I'm really loving the fact that during this retrograde, it's going to be trining your Lilith and also your Mars. And it's also trining your Virgo placements. I think it's a time to get inspired and think about, where else do you want to travel? What else do you want to learn? What is your belief system and your philosophy about having fun, about relationships, about having vacation or travel, or about having a good time? Equally, some really nice aspects, because it's also going to be sextiling all of these placements in your 7th house. And being that you're a Virgo rising, in this next year, Saturn, your ruler of your 5th house of true love, is coming into your 7th. So it's a time where either you'll consider doing more kind of consulting and like working more independently and trying to feel more fulfilled within your own job, or it's a time where you might get really serious about relationships. You might meet somebody who just totally changes or flips the script when it comes to how you look at your love life and dating. Saturn will actually turn retrograde at about 7-ish degrees. So that's right on your descendant. So even if you're not looking for love may find you, believe it or not, especially when like Venus and Neptune come together in mid-February. Saturn then comes into Pisces, then it's going to be sitting on your descendant at 7, which does deal with relationships. by June, right? And I feel like relationships also are going to be a thing because Saturn's sextiling Jupiter in your ninth. So you may be going and, you know, taking courses, learning things, doing some kind of continuing education, venturing into places, and you might meet people. So you don't have to go looking for it, but I'm liking kind of like that sextile between Saturn along your descendant and also planets that you have in the ninth house. Obviously, for all Aries, right? If you read your horoscope as an Aries sun, Mercury going retrograde is going to be in your 10th house. So it can be about changes at work, but I think it's about like your involvement with these changes and whether or not those changes make you feel like you're in control. So just knowing that you have all of this energy coming up and you're finally coming out of Pluto square your sun, I feel inclined to tell you, focusing on your emotions, making time for things that are going to make you really happy, really focusing on things that are also going to be about personal joy and fulfillment is what's most important. And I would say this to any Virgo rising, but with a retrograde conjunct Pluto, Pluto is changing signs next year. So for everybody, regardless of where Pluto is in your chart, realize that the Mercury retrograde is basically like somehow tied to Pluto getting ready to change signs. It's like, what have you learned about the Pluto transit? Where have you needed to pay more attention to your heart space or opening up and thinking more about being vulnerable and talking about what you love? In many ways, it can be like, defrosting your heart, so to say, right? So I think of like all the holidays and Mercury being in your 5th house and things that you can be doing to kind of like feel in the spirit, or like maybe traditions that you had as a kid around the holidays, especially like crafting or other things that feel like more like fun and games that can bring that kind of back to you, and it's making you feel like very homey, even if you are on the road, right? So maybe it's watching Charlie Brown, right? Maybe it's making like hot chocolate, like things that are just kind of reminiscent of like the childhood and the holidays, because Capricorn is very much about tradition. So I would encourage you to incorporate something like that into this next month, and hold on to your shorts, because definitely all of this mutable energy, Saturn going into Pisces, Saturn square your moon, you'll find over the next year that you're going to be either more in contact with clients consistently, or there's going to be like a relationship that's going to set up that's going to get you thinking about where you want to live and like not being as nomadic, right? Obviously, you don't want to say this to a Sag moon, but for you, it's like home is wherever you are, Sag moon in the 4th house. So you can adapt to different places, different cultures. You don't have a problem kind of being on the road, but you'll find that either because of a client or a business relationship or a romantic partner, it may feel like you're being tethered a little bit actually in this next year. So enjoy this time while you have it. And I love that you have the crafty, artsy stuff. Definitely do some of that. You know, I think it can be something that can be fun, but it's something that's also like traditional. So reflect back on some stuff that you did when you were a kid, and hopefully that can be something that can bring you some joy through this transit. And in the midst of all of these squares, you can just hang tight and you can chill, because not many people can do that with some of these mutable squares. Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, so we've got Rome, we've got Jerome, then we have, let's see, it was Girdelli, and then who else do we got? Just so you guys know who's next up. We've got Jerome, Girdelli. What's up, dude? How's it going? And Hugh, and then Brianna. Life's so crazy. Help me out. Hey, Lace. Is it Lace? Lise? We did close the readings, but if you want to sneak in there, we can definitely do that. Hey, Skyler. Thanks for becoming a member. Appreciate it. We got you on here too. If you click the PayPal link, you can send your question. Lisa, you can send your question to send your information, but that'll be the last one. It's just below. You see it highlighted in the information box below me. All right, Rome, let's see what's going on. Let's pull your info up. Yeah, that full moon in Gemini that's coming for you, my guy. That's going to square all your stuff. All right, so let's see what's kind of going on right now. So life is crazy. Yeah, you can super chat. That works too. Aries rising, sun in Virgo, and your moon is in Virgo. So Neptune's in opposition to your sun. Feeling like you're kind of swimming in the cosmic soup. Neptune just went direct, by the way. So you're going to find that now that Neptune is coming out of the opposition, things are going to get a little bit easier. But yeah, definitely there's a lot of things that are kind of like in transition, so to say. Mars, your chart ruler, man, being retrograde, especially in the third house, can kind of indicate that there's challenges in terms of where am I going? Where am I living? What's happening with how I communicate? What's happening with my vehicles? Like kind of feeling like everything's all over the place right now. Okay. So I've said this in my monthlies, but I'm just going to remind some of you guys who are going through this. Really right now, the only anchor in the cosmos is Saturn. Okay. So if you're looking at your chart, take a look at where Aquarius is in your chart right now. Saturn in Aquarius is direct. It is making sextiles to Mercury and Venus. It is also getting ready to make some sextiles to the Sun. We are going to see so many oppositions between Mars and squares between Neptune that the first 2 weeks of December is crazy town. It's crazy town. Nothing makes sense. Everything is topsy-turvy. So when I look at what's going on with you, yeah, messy living situation, back and forth stuff. The moon rules your fourth house of home, okay? So I'm looking at the full moon that's coming up for you, where moon and Mars, so Mars is you, moon is your fourth house, are going to come together and it's going to be a full moon. So it tells me that there may be some kind of conclusion or there may be some kind of decision that's going to be coming up as a result of this full moon. Here's the good news for you, dude. It is sextiling your ascendant, so it tells me that likely you're signing something, agreeing to something, you're hitting the road. It is also trining your Mercury and trining your seventh house. So somebody might say, hey, come here, I've got some work for you. You can stay with me for a bit. Somebody might ask you, hey, how quickly can you start working with me? Or, you know, you can stay here for a period of time. You know, how long do you need? It's actually quite positive in your astrology. The fact that it's trining your Mercury, being a Virgo, is really important, especially when you look at the fact that Mercury is second house to your sun. It's about people who are willing to help you, people who are willing to feed you, people who are willing to give you a space to stay, or they're trying to partner with you in some capacity, right? So when I look at that kind of playing out in the background, I feel like the key here is communication, speaking your piece, saying what's up, you know, telling people what you need, being willing to also like hit the road and go. So you may have to kind of pack up your stuff and be flexible. That's the feeling that I'm getting. And it's really not that bad of a gig. Now for a Virgo, you're going to hear it's 10 houses away from your sun. So that's a Saturn aspect. So, you know, Gemini energy in general is very challenging for Virgos because it just feels like you're getting hit left and right, you know, with Saturn's kind of karmic swings. So when I look at the third house getting amplified, it's saying you're having to work harder to communicate, you're having to work harder to get moving, you're having to work harder to also initiate a contract or an agreement. It can be about work. So work or looking for work in another area or work that you can be doing for another person can kind of send you on your way. Third house also deals with neighbors. It's about siblings. It can be about like aunts, uncles, and cousins. So I'm wondering, like, is this possibly a conversation that you have with an extended family member or somebody who's just like, look, if you need help, you know, I've got you. People can be very grouchy though. That's the one thing that I'll tell you about this full moon. But it is kind of prompting you to be able to go somewhere. Trine to Mercury, trine to Saturn. It looks like you're either going to have some kind of a partnership that's going to come through and help you, or it's going to be a friend that's like, hey, I got your back. What do you need? Keep in mind, this air trine is the only thing that's really kind of stabilizing this chart. So it means that you have to ask for help. You have to communicate. You got to call people. You have to be willing to kind of stand up and speak your piece. And it looks like you're going to be probably looking at moving or making some change very quickly. Equally, the ruler is Mercury, and you've got Mercury coming into your 10th house where it's going to hit your south node and then it's going to retrograde. So something is getting ready to change in regards to something about your work. So things are going to be kind of getting reorganized in some capacity. There is some sense of you being like, I'm changing jobs, I'm restructuring how I'm working, I'm thinking more about doing the work that I want to do. Maybe it means that, you know, you're kind of, you're feeling challenged because you have two options, because there can be some duality that's kind of coming up with that as well. Mercury, even through its retrograde, will come back to your south node. So it makes me feel like even if you have to take time off, let's say because you're moving or you're changing jobs, you're kind of getting back into the swing of it when Mercury comes into conjunction with your south node. So that makes me feel like even if you take time at the end of December, you might be kind of coming back for work or looking for new work in some way, and that'll be closer to the mid-January period. Once again, for Virgos, it's 5th house to your sun. So it's, do I work for myself? Do I like what I'm doing? You know, is this working for me? For you personally, it can also mean that it's about the action that you're taking to finally pursue something that you're passionate about. Once again, I'm a big fan of the Mercury retrogrades this year. They're all going to somehow aspect either the North Node, Uranus, or Pluto. So I'm looking at this coming into, you know, some trines for you in your North Node, in the 1st house, and also Uranus. So it's an opportunity to kind of strengthen work, bring in more resources, figure out where you're going to land. That Mars retrograde is super funky because it tells me that you might make a move here that's going to be temporary, and then Mars is going to go direct, and then it's going to start sextiling Jupiter, and it tells me that you might actually land somewhere probably a little bit more permanently when either Mars is in a trine with Saturn or when Mars is in your 4th house, and that's looking like closer to about March, maybe April. So I'm wondering if like a job is going to take you somewhere basically, or you're going to go and stay with somebody who's going to say, yeah, I've got some work if you want to be here for a period of time. And then it's looking like when Mars moves into your 4th house and it hits the North Node that you're a little bit more stabilized once we're getting closer to about April. So right around those eclipses in April, it's looking like that's when you're going to have more stability. Obviously, that then leads into the eclipses taking place in Aries, your 1st house, focusing on you. South Node, Libra, and your 7th house, where you're kind of detaching and letting go of other people. And then you're going to come into your nodal square. So what you really need to be open to right now is look for work in other areas, be willing to negotiate and possibly change what you're doing or how you're working. Also be willing to communicate during this full moon, because it looks like you might have to pack up and go somewhere, but it's going to be an opportunity that's going to give you something where you can buy some time just for the next couple of months until you get a little bit more so stable. And that's looking like that's going to be closer to about April of next year. Obviously, if your North Node is in Cancer, you're very sensitive and you're wanting to know that you have home and you're having security. The fact that Mars is being held up before it comes into conjunction with your North Node is telling me that you're having to look at a variation of different options, whether this is different living opportunities, different ways of communicating, different neighborhoods. And I would really be leaning into that trine between Saturn in your 11th and Mercury in your 7th and the 3rd house. It's like, who can I call? Who has some kind of opportunity for me, even if it's just short term? Or are there friends or extended family members who'd be willing to kind of help me out just until I get to the next step? But I'm telling you, my goodness, all of this is actually leading to you being able to make the changes in your career that you're wanting to make. And I have a feeling this is about you finding a way to be able to do something that you really genuinely love doing. All of that, you know, Neptune opposition has not been in vain. I feel like it's probably going to be about you consciously taking the time to kind of really structure a work routine revolving around what's best for you, what's healthiest for you, and overall what's going to make you the happiest. Good luck. That's a lot, but man, finally that Neptune's leaving your opposition to your sun, things are going to get a lot more clear. Let's see here. Thank you, Lisa. I see Toddman jumped in, Wendy jumped in. We did close the readings, but if you guys want to get in really quick, those will be the last ones for the evening. I'm excited. A full moon conjunct Mars is definitely a good thing for you, dude. Trust me on that. Of course. That's why I do them, so you guys can get some help. Okay, so was this Jaredy? Who was that? Sorry, I'm having to scroll through some of these. That was Victoria. Victoria. There she is. We've got a first timer here. So welcome. She says, I've never had my birth chart analyzed. I'm open to any advice. Everything in my life is transitioning. Job, home, relationship, openings for entrepreneurship, or possible marriage abroad. Sounds great to me. Libra rising. I like it. Mars retrograde in your 9th. Reevaluating the possibility of marriage with somebody in another place. I'd be careful with like actually signing on with getting married. Just wait until Mars comes out of a square with Neptune. So that's going to be closer to about March, personally. But the truth is that the horoscope in general for Libra risings for relationships is actually quite positive right now. So I know you're new to this. So basically, you know that you're a Pisces, right? You're born right in the beginning of Pisces. You're a Pisces sun. Your rising sign is Libra, so that's more about how you look, and that's also the horoscope that you want to be reading. And then your moon sign is in Scorpio. So read Libra, then read Pisces, then read Scorpio. They're all going to kind of, you'll see glimmers of truth in all of them, but Libra is going to be the most important. So what's going on right now? Okay, you had an eclipse conjunct your moon, so work is changing. It has been changing. You're having to kind of emotionally detach from what you've been doing work-wise to initiate something new. So hopefully you're navigating that well, because definitely not easy to have those eclipses on your moon. It does affect your ability to feel secure. 2, you have the South Node coming in conjunction with Pluto, so you're having to really take a look at your financial situation and realize what is and is not positive in terms of how you're spending money, your resources, what you're eating, especially if you're feeling like you're bound to certain things. So it's physical goods, spending, sugar, whatever. You're detoxing and clearing some of that out. 2, you also have Saturn coming for your sun. So you're going to be seeing that in March. Saturn coming in conjunction with your sun in the 5th house can be an excellent period for entrepreneurship, starting your own business. It'll definitely be something you're working on all year, because Saturn will go all the way to 7 degrees and retrograde back to your sun. But the 5th house is about true love. So I do see a lot of people get married at some point during the 5th house transit. It can also be about pregnancy and thinking more about whether or not you want to have children. So that's something else I would take into consideration. Saturn sun can be dealing with father figures. It can be dealing with men in general. And you've also got a Mercury retrograde that's getting ready to hang out in your 4th house. That'll be from about the end of December all the way through mid-January. So where am I living? Where do I want to live? And all of that is also getting squared by Mars. So it's more on like partnerships and relationships, right? So it's kind of like you're asking yourself, should I be moving? Should you be moving to me? Do we have to get married for you to be here? What does that mean in terms of paperwork and documents? I'm going to tell you right now, with Mars retrograde in opposition to your Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, you can forget being able to move forward very quickly with being able to get like a visa. Or it's going to be very difficult for legal documents or marriage documents or travel documents. So it may be good to have these conversations with somebody at a distance and wait until Mars comes out of the square with Neptune, where there's going to be more clarity. Let's talk about the good stuff. The good stuff is the fact that you do have Jupiter going into your 7th house. So for many Libra risings, this can be an excellent year for partnership, relationships, marriage, and commitment. So you're not going to be in a shortage of having potential people who want to work with you, want to partner with you, want to be romantic with you, or marriage proposals in general. I'm especially looking at when Jupiter and Venus are coming into your 7th house and they're coming into contact with your North Node, and then the North Node is going to sit on Mars. So you're going to have people who are actively pursuing you who are like, hi, I want you, or I want what you have, or I want what you have to offer. So if you do have a business that's in clients, the 7th house can be your marketplace. It's really great for being able to kind of put stuff out there and sell stuff. But yeah, I mean, personally, several proposals right now. Yeah, I would be taking, just personally, this is just me, I would be really looking at the synastry of the people who are coming in, because Mars going retrograde in your 9th tells me that you could have more than one person. But the fact that it's squaring Neptune is like, okay, but like, can you trust them? Do you know them well enough? Like that kind of stuff. If you're going to make a commitment to get married, let's wait until Mars comes out of a square with Neptune. Okay. And let's also do something like right around the time that you're having an eclipse on your Mars. Like I feel that it's a little bit smarter for you to make some of these decisions from about mid-April through about June or July of next year. But it's definitely coming, both because Jupiter is going through your 7th house, also because you're getting ready to have your nodal return. Foreigners, as much as I hate to say it, or somebody who's culturally different or diverse is probably likely because your North Node is at a 12. So it does represent somebody who's from a different place, they have a different background, they have a different culture. So there's nothing wrong with that, totally fine. I think it's cool that you have Saturn in a trine to your 7th house. So it might even be somebody who's like bilingual, they speak a different language. It might be a good idea for you to travel back and forth and like see these people or vice versa next year, just to get a feeling of like, could this work? I visit them, they visit me, you know, and then probably right around the time that you're having your transits in your 9th house, like when you have Juno go into your 9th house, you're thinking more seriously about possibly getting married. And then the North Node's going to come into conjunction with your Mars, and that's going to further the eclipse energy that you had in April. And it's trying to get you to actually commit and settle into marriage sometime around July. Now, here's the deal. If you're a Libra rising, whether it's you or anybody else who's listening, next year, Venus is going to go retrograde. That is your chart ruler. Okay. So we're not getting married in July or August of 2023. So if you're going to do it before or do it after the the Venus retrograde. You can even maybe do it like when Venus is stationing, although it will retrograde. So I would say the latest could be like the 19th, but I'm very particular with marriage charts. So if you decide that that's something that you want to do, I would say talk to me, come back. I can do an election date and I can tell you when the best time is to do it. But anything beyond that, you're kind of pushing it. So I would say just wait. But yeah, you're going to do it. And because Mars is the ruler of your 7th house and Mars is at 29 degrees, you're going to be like, we got to do this. We got to do this now. And it might even be somebody who has a previous experience in self-defense, martial arts, somebody who's worked with knives or heat. It might even be somebody who served in the military, because Mars can generally be somebody who's like a fighter or an athlete. That's the other way that I look at it. But when the North Node hits your Mars next summer, it's going to square Pluto. So it's going to be a situation that's going to be like, we're doing this, you have to move. We have to move very quickly. So yeah, it's going there, but like there's more that's going to be coming for you in the spring. Also knowing that you were born in 1987, you're in your annual perfection, you're 12 right now. So it's like you're closing some things out and you're getting ready to start new cycles. And when you have your birthday in February of 2023, you'll be entering into an annual perfection year 1, which means fresh new start, focus on you, your body, your relationships, and Venus will be your time lord. So all the more reason to be paying attention to April and May, as Venus is going through your 7th house and it's coming into conjunction with Jupiter, which tells me that not only are you going to be looking at a partner, but you're looking at a partner who's financially stable. They're also focused on being able to acquire property or real estate or buying land or developing land with you. So you kind of need somebody who has their shit together, personally. And because you've got Scorpio moon and Pluto in the 2nd house, you're like, what can you do for me? So as Jupiter comes into that opposition, it's probably going to be a situation where you're really assessing, not that you're choosing people based off what they have, but you're realizing that if you're going to be all in, that it's got to be somebody who's really kind of got their act together. You know what I'm saying? And Venus in the 4th also is very committed, very devoted. So there is this sense of being like, I need to have a home. I want security. If we're going to do this, we're going to do this right. And it'll work out. But I would say watch what happens with this Mercury retrograde over your Venus, because to me, that's kind of like lots of karmic undoing can happen where, if somebody's not who they say they were, or if somebody shows you their true colors, it'll probably be during the Mercury retrograde that's going to happen at the end of this year. Just no moves or movement right now. Mercury retrograde in your 4th house and a square to the nodes makes me feel like there is no guaranteed commitment whatsoever. Maybe it's talking to people about whether or not they would relocate or vice versa. But it's got to be somebody who has their act together. So wait till you get through this Mercury retrograde at the end of the year. It's going to square your sun. It's going to square the nodes. And obviously with your North Node in the 7th house, it's really highlighting your Mars. So it's saying that like people got to fight for you. There has to be somebody who has to really kind of chase after you and go after you. And may the best man win. Mars retrograde in your ninth, a little bit of back and forth with two people. And you'll probably make a decision with who's going to make the cut or not closer to about February, you know? But yeah, somebody who's fit, self-defense, something in regards to, athletes, athletics, and they're very talented with Mars. So it can be with weapons, with guns, with working out, like there's something there. So that seems to be really significant. That's how you'll know that it's them. So really watch those transits that are going to be happening for you in the new year. But somewhere right around February, right around mid-April is when you're going to be like, that's the one. And you'll pull the trigger and you'll know who it's going to be. Good luck. I also have Libra rising, Scorpio second house, and Capricorn in the fourth. So very, very, very picky. It's like the way that you look at partners is it's like a business deal. It's like an investment. It's like, okay, like, really sizing people up and seeing what they bring to the table. You're welcome. I saw that we got Wendy and Lisa that snuck in there. All right, guys, thank you for joining. I'll see you soon. Steph Todman, you too. Okay, so we've got Hughie, Brianna, Free Spirit, Skyler, Lashes, and I did not forget, we've got just another quantum function. Lashes, Marcelo, Stephanie, and then Wendy. Thank you guys for your patience. I'm probably botching your name, but I'm gonna ask again. But YouTube name is P. I'm gonna say P because I know that I can't pronounce your name correctly. Apologies. Thank you for coming back and letting me know what happened. I definitely remember this reading. You were born, let's pull this up here. You were born September 7th, 1996 at 1:14 p.m. Singapore. You want a lunar return. We're taking a look at where you're at in the Netherlands. And you followed up to let me know about the back and forth that you had in September in regards to the contract job, being able to get sponsorship for your visa, all kinds of weird, crazy stuff in terms of like hang-ups happening, withdrawing their offer because of payroll issues. Sounds super annoying and very Mercury retrograde-y. So you're asking me to take a look at your lunar return, and you're having hopes that there could be a job offer. Am I understanding that correctly? Readings are now closed for those of you guys who are asking. Okay, so this is your lunar return. So the lunar return is when the moon comes back to where it was in the same placement by degree from when you were born. So you can actually take a look at this. It lets you know kind of how the month ahead is going to go. You can assess this very similar to what is going on in a natal chart. Yes, but also anything that's happening this lunar return. I got you. So in this lunar return, which will be December 10th, okay, you have a Sagittarius rising. The degree, 16 degrees, is a Cancerian degree. So you're looking at the theme of Sag, travel, foreign places, possibly even sometimes homeland because it's at a 4. And the ruler, outside of looking at the moon, the ruler is going to be Jupiter. Okay, so this is what's interesting about this return. You got Jupiter in its exaltation in Pisces, and it's hanging out in the very last degrees of Pisces in your 4th house. It's also in a square to Jupiter. To Venus, excuse me. So Venus being the ruler of the 5th, whole sign 6th. So this is actually a really good indication that there is some big stuff that's about to shape up in regards to both work and your living situation. Both Mercury and Venus are in close proximity to one another, right? Mercury belongs to 7th house relationships. So notice that you're coming off of a full moon. You're also seeing that Mars is coming into your 7th house. It's going to start making oppositions. Or it's going to continue to be making oppositions to your descendant. So between Mars and your descendant, Moon in the 7th house, Venus square Jupiter, the theme of where is my, home life going? Where are my emotions going? And what's going on with relationships are going to be a huge theme. When you look at a lunar return, you want to take a look at where the moon is returning to. So the moon is always comfortable in Cancer. That's where the moon is placed natally. But being in the 7th house means that there's lots of changes in emotions in regards to what's going on with relationships and partners. Mercury in opposition. So talking to somebody at a distance, going back and forth with people, especially being that Mercury is in a sign associated with Capricorn. So it's associated with business. It's also belonging to your second house of money and work. So there can be a sense of like going through interviews, talking to people about, you know, documents and some kind of support or something in regards to being able to like stay somewhere or live somewhere. Can be really great for relationships because you got Mars on the descendant and because you have Venus and Mercury in the first house. You may feel like you're more inclined to walk right up to somebody and talk to somebody. You may feel like you're more inclined to write somebody. You might feel like you're more inclined also to just feel more confident when it comes to talking to people. So especially if there's job interviews, first dates, things like that, that can be wonderful with this chart. Just kind of sidebar, you know, I think of like the Sagittarius risings in my life who I've been speaking to, friends and also clients, and how they've been feeling so overwhelmed with the mutable squares. So they know that with Jupiter and Neptune, something's changing with them emotionally within their private life. There's also something that's kind of ending because Pisces can be about what's ending. Yeah, it does make sense. So if you've got a natal ascendant at 19 degrees Sag, it's aligning with something similar to your natal chart. So it's like almost like a magnification of your natal chart. So you also want to take a look at what transits are happening here natally. So if you're a Sag rising, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Mars retrograde in the 7th house is like, what's going on with partners? Am I supposed to meet somebody? Am I reconnecting with people? Am I going to hear back from people? And you can feel like your interactions with other people are either a little bit more passionate or they're a little bit more heated. And the squares to both Neptune and Jupiter tells me that there's something that needs to change and kind of shift in regards to either your emotions or your home life before you can go further in terms of relationships and partnerships. But in layman's terms, it's going to be mirroring basically your natal transits. So it's almost bringing back this energy back to looking at your transits and what you're experiencing in life in general, you know? It's hard, I think, with Jupiter in the last degrees because there's this recognition that one part or one phase of your life is ending and a new one is emerging. And Pisces isn't all that it's cracked up to be. It can be very sensitive and very emotional, and there can also be like a lot of fear or like avoiding making certain changes, right? The moon in opposition by sign to Venus makes me feel like there can be a difficult time really nurturing the needs of other people and also staying in alignment with what you need. The moon in opposition to Mercury can also be the same thing. You know, I would give you the same advice I'd give my other Sag risings, which is basically like, you can't just tough it up and be like, everything's fine, I'm okay. Like there is a need to really acknowledge and kind of tap into the fact that you are more emotional, you are more sensitive. Checking in with 7th house people can be helpful. So if it's not going to be a romantic partner, it could be a therapist, it could be a counselor, it could be a guru, it could be a mentor, it could be a family member, somebody who can kind of give you that feedback if you're feeling like you're kind of swimming in the cosmic soup. The positives is that you've got Saturn in your 2nd house of money and security and self-esteem. That's trining Mars. So it tells me that you're determined, right, to make sure that you can kind of keep the finances flowing, to find a job. Mars retrograde in the 6th house might, you know, bring you to opportunities. You might have to kind of weigh your options and go back and forth and decide which one's best. This may also prompt you to start thinking about whether or not you're open to looking at jobs in other cities or other countries, and the possibility of being able to find something which would then change your schedule, and then it would also allow you to relocate with squares to Jupiter. I'm also looking at the sun in your 1st house coming into in conjunction with Uranus in the 5th, and where this is a chart that's screaming out for, I need travel, I need a change of scenery, I need to be in a different place. It's really hard for me to be in one place right now, or it's really hard to be locked into one job or one relationship. So it's really asking for some sense of change and like diversity, right? And I think that, you know, Mars going retrograde over your descendant back into your 6th house, you really want to be careful because there's so much emphasis in your 1st house, and Mars retrograde in your 6th can be overworking, long hours, mentally draining, but it can also bring about like health related things. So I'm not saying this to scare you, but being that you have, you know, Mercury that's going to go retrograde, you know, through your 1st house, and Mars that's going retrograde in your 6th, it's really asking you, like, is this the kind of stress that you want? Is this the kind of schedule that you want? Is this the kind of job that you want? Where are you learning to kind of get more clear when it comes to communication and feeling like you can be a little bit more direct or a little bit more on top or assertive when it comes to what you're doing work-wise? By whole sign standards, Mercury will retrograde in your 2nd. So it's going to be about money and resources and all that fun stuff. but it's not actually going to go into your second house, Placidus-wise. So it's more about how you're communicating and your energy levels. So be very mindful of your emotions and your feelings this month. And I feel like checking in with other people when you're feeling a little bit low or a little bit down can be really helpful with that moon in the 7th house. Am I missing anything? Well, you've also got Mars trine your midheaven. So between Saturn at 20 degrees, Mars at 15 degrees, it's funneling into a air trine with Libra midheaven at 18. So once again, you know, being willing to really reevaluate, what is my worth? Am I going to take less than I deserve? Am I going to see what else is out there? Am I going to keep looking? Am I going to keep searching? And Mars retrograde in the 6th house can be a real pain in the ass, because there can be this feeling of being like, man, I'm just constantly, you know, output, but what am I bringing in? But it's about finding a job that you're willing to make the sacrifice and you're willing to give service to. Also, it can be about kind of going back and forth and doing two things. So it can mean that it can provide you two part-time things, or something that might be temporary until you find something that's kind of like a bridge job. Just food for thought, especially because the moon is 2nd house to that Mars transit. And look just the day after your lunar return, as the moon is going deeper into Cancer, it's going to start trining Neptune. It's also going to start trining Jupiter. So it's a great time to like connect with family, be able to talk to people about your feelings. It can also really open the door in terms of like emotional things in general. And watch out with that Lilith that's in opposition to Pluto. Lilith is very erratic. She moves very quickly, but I could see Lilith in Cancer in the 8th house having fears revolving around money, resources, home, in the opposition to Pluto, which is like fears that are coming up about security, right? So you'll notice that kind of pop in right around the next day when that lunar transit happens, but it's going to trine out to Neptune, it's going to trine out to Jupiter. Being in water, staying well rested, being aware of your feelings, working through that, soaking, things like that can be really helpful, you know? And I think you said that there was like some similarities in regards to what may have happened the last time. So, you know, Mercury retrograde in your 2nd house can present you with an opportunity to rethink and restructure how you're making money and what's going on with where you're living. So it's going to be yet another opportunity to find ways to be able to find a job that not only pays you, but possibly can help you with the documents. But still, nevertheless, you're in this extended Mars square. So you might be feeling like, you know, it's harder for you to find people that you can kind of partner with professionally, or even in terms of your romantic life. But I have found, especially for Sag risings, Mars is the ruler of your 5th house. It's about, you know, finding solo jobs, things that can be more independent. It can be about finding a really strong romantic partner, or some really significant karmic partner kind of coming into your life. So I know that that may not be what you're looking for, but between the Mars retrograde and also the moon in the 7th house, I feel like there could be more action with some of these people this month. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful for you. Sending you good vibes in the midst of some of those transitions. Definitely high adventure for Sag risings right now. All the mutable squares are a lot. Does it mean anything if the ascendant degree of this lunar return is the same as the lunar return that happened in 2020? Yes, by degree, yeah, but the planets are going to be in different places. So the North Node back then, though, was in Gemini. So you might want to you can look at that return. There may be some similarities in terms of expanding the idea of what could be home, or how you feel about where you're living. That particular lunar return, which was also the day of the lunar eclipse, was also very significant. So yes, that was the lunar eclipse in Cancer. But wasn't that, I'm trying to think, was that in the same degree? I could be wrong. I don't remember what degree those eclipses were. Let me look. So it was December of 2020. Oh, January of 2020. Got it. January 10th, 2020. Yeah, it was off by about 9 degrees, but I mean, we're splitting hairs here. That was really close. So yes, but one thing I see about that eclipse is that it was technically, I'm going to assume, because it was 20 degrees, that was probably, yeah, it was still in your 7th house, right on the cusp of your 8th. But it looks like it was also in opposition to the sun, and it was in the opposition to Mercury. So yes, you can see some similarities, but it's still going to be a little bit different, because that eclipse was also factored in with a Mercury Cazimi Saturn, Pluto, they're all within 2 degrees. So it was a huge shift in terms of your resources is what I'm going to assume. But compare the return because there will be some similarities to an extent. What will be similar is that Saturn's going to be close to that same degree of where Venus was. So there's something that's solidifying and kind of crystallizing about that. But you may see some similarities. I would compare the two. Just know that some of the outer planets are going to be in different areas, basically. And Mercury is going to go retrograde over the degrees of where that eclipse happened in Capricorn, right? So there's like a story that's still kind of unfolding in regards to those eclipses. We're still feeling eclipses from several years ago. Isn't that wild? Definitely circle back. Let me know what happens. I'd love to hear. Okay, so we've got Brianna, free spirit. Then I will be taking just another quantum wave. Skyler, lashes, Marcelo, S. Todman, Wendy, and Lisa. Thank you guys for your patience. Okay, so Brianna, free spirit, and just another quantum wave. You're on deck. So let's look at Brianna. And Brianna was, there we go, January 15th, 93. Signed up for your 201 class. Looking forward to it. Awesome. Wanted to know about my love life. Currently single, happy. Have a few prospects. I feel some sort of change coming. Noted that Venus is going to transit over my cap stellium soon. Also saw Saturn is going to transit my Venus soon. So is this positive or negative? Thank you so much. Good questions. Cool. Well, I will see you in Astro 201. Those of you guys who want to learn astrology with me, you can sign up. Go to my website. It's going to be starting live. It'll be 8 weeks of learning about transits, learning about return charts, all the things that I'm doing here. If you want to learn how to make predictions, sign up. We are going to be having that all the way until January, but the price is going to increase between now and Christmas. All right, so Brianna, Aries rising, Sun in Capricorn, and you've got your Moon in Scorpio. So you're asking questions about relationships, what might be coming. Well, let's see. So we've got Pluto that has finally started moving away from your sun. So that in itself, because the sun rules your 5th house of romance, things can actually start opening up here, right? So things are going to get a little bit easier in that sense. You're a 7th house moon, so you're going to feel more comfortable in partnerships or relationships. But there's been some interesting stuff happening for you here recently. You've had an eclipse that was on top of your moon. This was just recently when it was in Scorpio. And we also had the Sun-Venus Cazimi, right? That took place in Libra. So Venus was dying in the heart of the sun. She's actually currently being reborn. Venus is actually, if you go out in the morning or late at night, you can start to see her becoming visible. So she's finally being reborn, and she's going to be the morning star pretty soon. So that basically means she's shifting in terms of her placement in the sky. So there was some promise of something new that's going to be emerging in terms of your relationships. That was the promise in your 7th house. You might see this more in the spring, right? So that eclipse, though, was at, looks like right around 2 degrees. So it was right on top of your moon. Emotions in regards to relationships, fresh starts in relationships, that might take all the way until the spring of 2023 to fully emerge when we see a full moon that's going to happen in Scorpio in your 7th house. But your 7th house is ruled by Venus. So the question that you had about the Saturn-Venus transit, I mean, you've got Saturn at 17 degrees of Aquarius. You've got Venus that is at 12 degrees of Pisces. They're not conjunct. They're in the same house, but they're not conjunct. So there's enough space there. You won't have Saturn conjunct your Venus until 2024. So I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but you're not going to have this for a little bit longer. Venus in Pisces, awesome. It's exalted. I like it. So it means that it's extra sweet, romantic, little self-sacrificial, but very dreamy, creative, whimsical. You've also got Venus by sign that is in a sextile to Uranus and Neptune. So that's cool. It's a little different, innovative, also still very creative and romantic. And it's also in, by sign, a trine to Pluto. So you got some nice Venus placements, honestly. Looking at 2024, we can go there if that's what you want to look at. When Saturn comes into conjunction with your Venus, this is going to be more about a crystallization of karmic relationships. Saturn is the ruler of your 10th house. So I see it as being like, on one hand, it can be about devotion, love behind the scenes, but it can also be about new creative endeavors, talents, things in regards to what you're doing professionally and how you're learning how to apply yourself more in terms of some of your talents. Saturn will come into conjunction with your Venus. It looks like it's right around the same time as a Mars transit. So first Saturn's going to hit your Venus, and it's becoming conjunct right around the third week of March of 2024. Saturn crystallizes and it commits to something. Do we see karmic relationships when Saturn-Venus transits happen? 100%. It's a little bit back and forth. On one hand, Venus in Pisces is nice. Saturn hitting that, you will basically look all year long, 2024, and you'll go, is this the right relationship for me? Do I keep this or do I let this go? Love at a distance, love behind the scenes, love with somebody at work. These things can happen, but they don't have to. And I always remind my Venus and Pisces people, or, Venus in the 12th house, like there's an invisible wall around you. Sometimes you can have a tendency to over-idealize someone and fall in love with somebody who's unavailable. Sometimes you'll fall for being the other person or having love kind of behind the scenes, that you're willing to make those sacrifices just to have that person. Being that you have Venus in the 12th in Pisces at 12, it's extra mystical, magical. There can be this sense of being like soulmate stuff that kind of comes up. That's the feeling that I'm getting. Ironically, it's going to go hand in hand with also the South Node coming into conjunction with Jupiter along your descendant, technically belonging to your 12th house, which makes me feel like you might meet somebody who is your soulmate and it's a past life husband. That's doubly true because you have Saturn and Venus coming into conjunction with each other. Literally, you can't make this stuff up. Saturn will be conjunct Venus exactly, and you have your Venus return. I would advise you to go and look at your Venus return for March of 2024, right? It's a little over a year away, but that might be a really significant connection. It can be with somebody abroad or somebody who's like a meant to be that's come back from past lives. You guys have seen my readings for some time now. Like, I don't really use the term soulmates, twin flames, all that stuff. I'm respectful of that community, but it's not really my thing. But something about this makes me feel like that actually might be what happens. Now let's talk about what's going on right now. The eclipse on your moon is going to play out over several years. So you will see clear until 2024. You're still feeling the effects of that. The South Node is going to hit your moon. That'll be in June of next year. So there is still potentially somebody who's on the chopping block then. Moon in the 7th house, you bring in partners that can be really intense, or people who can be very sexual, very passionate, very fixated. So I'm going to tell you, there is still a possibility sometime June through maybe August that you're like, this is too much for me. Venus will go retrograde in your 5th house over Chiron. The South Node hits your moon. Could be that you cut somebody off. Could be that somebody from the past comes back, right? 7th house moon also talks about the relationship with your mother. And so this is just me being a 7th house moon and what I've heard in terms of both Scorpio moon placements and 7th house moons. Challenges and issues emotionally from mother figures. So it may not even play out in a relationship. It can mean that you realize that there's some issues going on there with the relationship with your mom, and there needs to be like some space as a result of the South Node hitting your moon. So that eclipse is still playing out clear until, basically, June, July of next year. As the South Node is continuing to move through your 7th house, Placidus, right? Clearing of old karmic debts and relationships. The South Node then moves into Libra. So as an Aries rising, you're going to hear, people from the past can come back, or you're cutting relationships out in general. And I have this feeling that there is still this conscious working on cutting your mom out through next summer, honestly. And then you're going to see a situation where the South Node goes into Libra, and it's going to start coming into a square with your Mars. A new relationship stuff is setting up, and maybe you're thinking about making changes in relationships. Maybe you're thinking about moving in with somebody next fall, right? That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. Long story short, as the North Node is moving through your 1st house, it's about you. What do you need? What do you want? In Taurus right now, how do you feel? What do you value? Your beauty, your body, your makeup, your clothes, whatever. Your values, you're like feeling solid in your body. When the North Node goes into Aries in the first house, maybe you're going to feel like more active, more dynamic, more athletic, more independent. And you're going to bring in people who are going to be more kind of Libra, who are going to kind of chase you. They want to partner with you. They're talking about commitment in marriage. As the South Node goes through your 7th house, it's like, I'm not saying you can't have relationships because karmic people show up, but that's not the focus. That's not the emphasis. Like if a relationship is there, wonderful, but it's the icing on the cake, right? So actually you're still in this process, both with the North Node in your first, Jupiter in your first, where you're like, what do I want to do? What do I want? Really getting in touch with the relationship with yourself and the vision that you have for your life, and really feeling good in your own skin and being you and being authentic so you can bring in somebody who's a really good match. Does that make sense? Also, annual perfection year 7, i.e. when you turn 30, which will be next year, welcome to the 30 club, is going to put an emphasis on your 7th house. So right after you have your birthday in January, Venus is your time lord. So when Venus conjuncts your sun, when Venus conjuncts Pluto, when Venus sits on your ascendant, when Venus conjuncts Jupiter, when Venus goes through Libra, you want to really pay attention to those transits. That also means the eclipses in the fall in your 7th house are going to be very significant. It can be bringing somebody in very specific for you in terms of long-term commitment in marriage, but likely it's going to be somebody that you don't see coming because you have Venus in the 12th. You might have dreams about them before they show up though. So the fact that you're like, oh, I have this feeling something might be coming. Yeah, it could start as early as like April, May, because that's when that eclipse is going to complete in your 7th house. But know that whoever is around, you're still kind of feeling it out until the Venus retrograde next year. And when Venus goes retrograde, that's very important because you're going to be making decisions about relationships. I'm not going to tell you not to take relationships seriously. I think the South Node is just saying it's got a karmic thing so people can come in. I would say you're more likely to commit more when you have Saturn on your Venus, at least publicly, right? So there can be a sense of feeling people out. You're more likely to commit once the South Node is off of your moon, and also when Saturn is in conjunction to your Venus. So I could see more commitment post-May 2023. I also feel like you start feeling the effects of Saturn when it's within 10 degrees. So as soon as Saturn gets into 2 degrees, you're already feeling it, right? But I think with Saturn and Venus in the 12th house, like, you know when to like dip out and be like, no, I'm good, give me my space, or I want to be by myself. And what you're learning with Venus in the 12th house is not to run away from relationships, not to evade, but also to kind of really show up and like learn how to kind of communicate with people. Venus in your 12th is your hidden zone, but it's somebody else's work zone. So I'm also wondering if somebody meets you through a gym, or they meet you through a 6th house place, work, some kind of like co-working space, something like that. Somebody can pop in unexpectedly. But you'll start having dreams likely before that person shows up. So when you have intuitive hunches or dreams, Venus at a 12 in the 12th, that's how you're going to know. So I could see with Jupiter being in your 1st house and the eclipses in your 1st house, you're traveling more, you're working out more, you're focusing on getting out there and being independent, and you just meet somebody that way, right? But yeah, more commitment after the spring next year, and definitely Saturn coming into conjunction with your Venus is going to be very important. That Venus return in the spring of 2024. And it looks like Saturn will retrograde and it'll station on your Venus. So by the fall of 24, you're going to know, and the North Node will be coming into Pisces, right? So yeah, I could definitely see some more serious commitment coming in the fall of 2024. And Saturn coming into conjunction with Venus ain't all that bad because it's going to trine Mars in your 4th house. So changing and transforming relationships and also customs, and maybe even something about culture and your philosophy. It's going to trine Mars, which is your chart ruler, so making a transformation in terms of where you're living. It's very emotional. Very exciting. You'll have to stop back and let us know what's going on. But you've already kind of gone through the gauntlet. Saturn return, Pluto on your sun, Venus in the 12th, yes, foreigners, but also people that you meet while you're traveling, or while you're going to school, or while you're learning more about film or art or photography. That could be another way that you meet them. Good luck. Venus to the 12 is always interesting. So you've got it doubly. Pisces, 12th house and 12 degrees. Wow. You are very welcome, Bree. All right, so we've got Free Spirit, and thank you, Quantum. I got your question. I'm going to plug that in just a second. All right, so let's take a look at free spirit. And that was Sarah. Hey, Sarah. Sarah says, May 20th, 88, 6:20 p.m. That's in Australia. Should I move cities to my old hometown in July of 23? Will international work for me to be profitable? Thank you. Such a fan. All right. Such a good question, especially as Neptune is stationing direct. This is a really great example of astrology. Sarah is a Sagittarius rising. Jupiter is her chart ruler. And Jupiter has also been moving forward in the sign of Pisces in her whole sign 4th house. So as Neptune goes direct, Jupiter, they're both kind of connected to her 4th house. And she says, do I return back home next year? Well, for Sagittarius rising, Saturn is going to be moving into Pisces next year, which can be an indication of getting ready to return home. The truth is, right now, looking at your astrology, between all these planets in Sag, a Mars retrograde in your 7th, everything squaring your South Node in the 10th, it's just like anything goes, right? So making any decisions right now is not going to be easy for you to do, because when we have mutable squares, especially when they're in angular houses, the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, the 10th, super loud. So there is a sense of being like work's changing, relationships changing, homes changing. There's not a lot of stability. There's a lot of dreaming and envisioning and being hopeful for the future. And you just got to kind of hang there, right? Thank God Jupiter is your chart ruler and you're like, okay, I'm super optimistic about what the future could be. I have seen in transit with my clients, and I have also experienced this too, when Saturn went into my 4th house, I actually returned home to where I was born and I spent time there. And like there was a period of 3 years where there was definitely a lot of going back and forth. So I feel confident in saying that as Saturn comes into Pisces, and it's actually going to hit a little bit sooner for you, it's going to go into your Placidus 4th house starting in March, that you start thinking and planning and getting really practical when it comes to timing, when it comes to going back home. What I also like is that Saturn is going to sextile your natal Uranus, and it's also going to sextile your natal Saturn and your natal Neptune, right? So there's something going on here that's like, I'm planning and proactively 1st house moving back home. Does it mean it has to happen next year? Not necessarily. I think Saturn coming in conjunction with Mars is still trying to get you thinking about where it is you want to be. Are you going to be happy there? You know, can you feel like you can date there? Is there going to be enough like creative stuff for you to do there? I would be asking myself that first. You really have until Saturn comes into contact with your North Node to like physically go back home. So that could actually be until the spring of 2024. And when I say spring, I think my spring is your fall, if I am correct. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. April, May, June of 2024, you have until then to be able to make that move. I could see Mars bringing you back home. I could see Saturn on the North Node bringing you back home. I will say on the other side of this, North Node in the 4th, you know, Neptune and Saturn being there can also, touch wood, be things that are going on with a parent's health, especially because you have your North Node at a 20, where you don't want to be feeling like you have to go home because there's a crisis. So I'm not sure what's prompting you to get to thinking about being back home, but just food for thought, whether it's an older family relative or a parent. I could see them benefiting or family benefiting from you being around and being closer then. Because it's not just going to be Saturn in your 4th house. It's going to be Saturn square your ascendant, Saturn square your Mercury, Saturn on your North Node, Saturn opposing your South Node. You're going to be focused in like home, property, family, real estate, getting grounded, and like trying to drown out the noise and all of the changes that are going on with work and also relationships. Just food for thought. So doing that preemptively in 2023, in my opinion, I'm very Saturnian. I would rather plan in advance and be like, I would like to be grounded and know what's going on and feel secure when shift hits the fan in 2024, right? So I think it's a good move. I also know that, you know, you in this next year, so let's see, so you're in an annual perfection year 11, you're going to go into a 12 next year, which is about traveling and unforeseen things and changes happening. So right now you're in a mercurial year, which is connected to, no, excuse me, you're in a Libra year, so Venus year until spring. So Venus is going to be going through Pisces. So if we look at 2023, I could see sometime between February and probably March, you make the decision that you're like, okay, I am going to be moving back home. So yes, in so many ways, I think that's a good idea. You were also asking international travel being profitable in 2023. I mean, the fact that Saturn is squaring your sun right now makes me feel like it's not a thing right now, that you may not feel like that's even remotely possible until Saturn comes out of a square with your sun. So not yet. I feel like when you have your Jupiter return in the 6th, yes, that you have more opportunity for that. I feel like the world needs to open up a little bit, maybe after that Mercury retrograde in May. And then when you have your Jupiter return, it is looking more so likely like you can be traveling more for work, and that's going to be starting really from the summer of 2023 on. You'll also have a Venus retrograde in your 9th, square Jupiter. So if you feel like scheduling, you can swing it, and also that you have enough clients or the ability to be able to do business, your Jupiter return, Jupiter trine your 10th house, Jupiter trine also Pluto in your 2nd house. Second half of next year is more likely in terms of travel for work. And things are only going to get better, right? Because Jupiter and Uranus are going to come into conjunction with your sun. And I have to tell you, 2024 makes me think that you're going to be traveling to a lot of other places, and inevitably you're going to be changing where you're living. I can't tell if it's because of a partner or what the deal is, but you haven't lived until Uranus has hit your sun. So there's definitely possibly another relocation or living in another place in 2025. So if you can go back home and hang tight for a little bit, it's probably a good move. And you will see when you get to the 2025, 2026, there's possibly going to be some changes in considering living in another place, probably as a result of having clients in other places and just having traveled in general, you know? Hopefully that's helpful for you, Free Spirit. Thank you, Sarah, for dropping in. I appreciate it. Okay, so we have got quantum. Let me plug you in here. And that was, here we go, 5/21/1980. (2:37 a.m.) Okay, so it looks like I've got you here, May 21st, 1980, 2:37 a.m. in Baltimore. When is a good window to purchase a new vehicle? And then it looks like you also said, let's see. I'm on a fixed income. I have to purchase a new vehicle soon. I'm also starting a small business in the spring. I need to strategically these times. See any good windows? Anything else major that you see? I can do that for you. Donations are closed for reading, guys. Sorry, we closed them, and we are definitely not doing tarot. We're doing astrology, so if you want tarot reading, I'll be back next Saturday. Appreciate your understanding. We alternate weeks. All right, so let's take a look at what's going on for quantum. So quantum needs a car. Oh, how appropriate. Mars retrograde in your 3rd house. So here's the deal. Has not been the ideal time, right? And it looks like you've been in a little bit of a pickle because your ownership, which deals with what you possess, Venus, has been in opposition to Mars square Neptune, where you're like, I need this, but I'm also doing that, but how do I swing this? And you're like trying to figure everything out right now. So a Mars retrograde is definitely not the most ideal time to be buying a vehicle when Mars, whole sign, Pisces rising, money ruler is going retrograde in your 3rd. So my advice would be, if you have to buy a car, Can you do something temporary or something that you can lease or that you can do that you can either give back or something that you can use for a short period of time? That's the best advice I can give you. 2, when Mercury goes retrograde, because Mercury does deal with vehicles and cars and gadgets and things like that, also not an ideal time to be making a purchase for a vehicle. So in so many ways, it's not a good time. Okay, so I would say nobody has any business buying a new car or a house right now. As much as I sound like I'm beating a dead horse, everybody is going to see that economically things are going to be very, very rough over the next 6 months. So buying secondhand, borrowing something, leasing something, and I'm not talking about leasing a brand new car. I'm talking about something that you can be like, hey, I'm going to buy a car for $1,000 to get me through until I launch this business and do other things. It's going to be a lot better for you. But you have to really still use really a lot of discretion because Mars is square Neptune. So you could be like, it looks good. It looked good in the ad. You know, I had it looked at. They told me that the car's been serviced and I buy it. And then 2 weeks later it has a problem. So A, be careful. You have to understand not everything is going to look like the pictures in person. And B, go and take it to a mechanic, have it actually looked at independently to make sure that it's going to be mechanically sound. I'm going to give you the best dates so that way you can go and do something temporary. And I'm also going to tell you better dates that you can do something permanent. Okay. So let's do something like not making an impulse purchase on December 7th, which you're going to feel like doing because you're going to have that full moon conjunct Mars. It's going to trine Saturn, so it says that you're likely heeding the advice that somebody gave you in regards to being very careful with making a change when it comes to a vehicle. You may find something suddenly in a local magazine, a newspaper, something that's been, like put around town. You might be driving around your neighborhood and you see a sign on a car that says for sale. It can prompt you to reach out and call somebody, but the squares to Saturn is also not making me feel so great about making a purchase then. Let's do something like when the sun comes out of opposition with Mars. And we see Venus starting to come into Aquarius and making a trine with Mars. So obviously I know timing is important, but I would advise you to be looking, let's see, we got to do the Mercury retrograde. Okay, so Venus starts coming into a trine with Mars and Mars is getting ready to station. And this is going to be around January 8th. Better timing for purchasing something. Granted, you're still in a Mercury retrograde, but you will have just come out of the Cazimi. Okay, so you have the ability to wait a while. Okay, great. I would not even start looking until mid-January. I think that you might be in a sweet position where it's like, you might find somebody who's like, I bought this car, I can't afford it, I have to get rid of it. Or you go to a lot and you have like somebody who returned a lease. I think the Mars retrograde in your third would be wonderful for somebody who had their car repossessed, as terrible as it sounds, or somebody who, kept the car for 6 months and they couldn't afford it. Or you go to a local car auction, right? Mars retrograde in the third, and you're able to buy something super cheap and it's like a great vehicle. We're going to see so many people returning cars. It's not even funny. That's what the Mars retrograde is about. We're going to see this really strong pretty much from about December all the way through March of 2023. So for the next 3 or 4 months, this is what's going to be going on. I would say Mars stationing, coming into conjunction with Mercury, is a wonderful time for you to be purchasing something. And this is going to be much stronger from January 26th through the 30th of January. You can also wait until Mercury comes into a trine with Mars. And that's also going to be really good with the lunar transits around February 18th or 19th. That's when I would be making a purchase. Mars is direct, Mercury's out of retrograde, everything's going to be trining your third house, and I think that you're going to be really glad that you waited. Jupiter will be in your whole sign second, so that's also good for money. And yes, this is still going to be kind of in a square to your natal Saturn, but it is what it is. It's just about learning how to negotiate, making a deal with another person. I also wonder, as Mars goes retrograde in your third, like I said, if you find something through your local newspaper or just driving around town, somebody has something for sale that you're willing to purchase. I think you're also going to really benefit by looking at local car lots and stuff, because they're going to start having sales and being like, everything has to go. We need to get rid of stuff, or there's specials. If you really need a new car, right? If you need one. Pluto is also coming into a trine with your sun too. So that also makes me feel like there's going to be a really great kind of negotiating power that you can basically have with companies or other people if you're going to be purchasing something. And Saturn's finally coming out of an opposition with your moon. So yes, the most important thing is making sure you have wheels, but it's actually really laying the groundwork for restructuring a business or restructuring something that you're going to be launching online, or something in regards to your media pertaining to how you're doing advertising or sales or some kind of campaign for your work. So I think that's like super, super important. But yeah, if you're on a budget, you're going to get much more bang for your buck pretty much February through about May or June next year, you know? And also because you got 29 degrees Taurus is the cusp of your third house. So it tells me that you're not somebody who just wants a cheap vehicle. You're going to want something that's going to be comfortable. You're going to want something that's going to be stylish. Even though you have your Sun and Mercury in the third, it's very versatile. So it also makes me feel like you might go back and forth between two styles, two types of cars, two different things that you're thinking about or considering buying. And with the Sun and Mercury there, and Mercury's under the beam of the Sun, you're likely going to be taking advice either from like neighbors or friends or family, and going back and forth and talking about what kind of a car you want. So there can be a lot of back and forth where people are telling you like what's worth it and what's not worth it. Mars also can play a role in terms of you thinking about what kind of vehicle. If you want to get a gas-powered vehicle, if you're thinking about getting a motorcycle, if you're thinking about getting a two-seater, you know, it's going to be like all of the different options, and you thinking about realistically what you can get, right? Traditional astrology says actually your fourth house is vehicles, but in your case, whole sign 4 is Gemini, Placidus third is Gemini, so it's definitely about cars. And I think you're going to make up your mind a little bit better in terms of what it is that you want, specifically right around the end of January. And then you'll move forward and probably get a pretty amazing deal from February on. So what might be somebody else's return might end up being something that you get at just like an awesome deal. So look for things that have possibly been returned. Unless you really want to buy new, you got to wait until they're doing those like flash fire sales. I don't think you understand. There's been such an issue getting used cars. Now we're going to see that there's going to be too many used vehicles, and there's going to be delays for parts and pieces for new cars that they're going to be kind of hurting for bringing in some newer stuff. Production is going to slow down majorly next year. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. Watch that full moon because you're going to feel like making an impulse buy. Stay away from the car lots. Don't go and test drive anything. Somebody will try to talk you into something. Hopefully that's helpful for you. We've got Skyler, Lashes, Marcelo, Stephanie, and then we have my two ladies who are here somewhere. I'm trying to find you. Wendy and Lessie. Thank you guys for waiting. Appreciate your patience. Okay, let's take a look at Skyler. Hey, this is Skyler. My birthday is June 28th, 89, 3:02 a.m., Fort Knox. I want to know if I will see success with the Craigslist Middleman Strategy course. Skyler is a Taurus rising, Sun in Cancer, and Moon in Taurus, 12th house. So you're asking questions about a course in regards to business and being able to kind of like level up in regards to business. So very interesting question. Obviously, there has been this kind of back and forth maybe in regards to making the investment. You've got planets going through your 8th house right now, like the Sun and Venus and Mercury. So you're looking to totally transform your financial situation. You're looking to bring more in as a result of an investment, 8th house, that you're making in your education, Sag. So to be honest with you, Mercury coming into your 9th house, really amazing time for you to be starting a new course. So whether you're starting around the 7th or the 8th, or it's something that's going all the way into January of next year, good timing for taking a course and taking a class. I'm liking that Mercury is going to hit Uranus and it's going to trine your moon. So it's going to open you up to things that you weren't even aware of, or blind spots perhaps that you've had in regards to business. Now, Mercury will also retrograde through this part of your chart. So it tells me that setting aside the time to change and transform the way that you think and what you believe when it comes to business is very important. You don't have to, purely just be you. Any Taurus rising is going to have this experience because it's about changing the philosophy about work and making a change and going back to school, taking courses, anything like that. Good timing. You're also going to have the sun come into the 9th house. And really what I'm looking at is when the sun comes into conjunction with Mercury retrograde, and there's going to be a Kazemi moment right around January 6th or 7th, it might be like an epiphany and like an aha moment. I like that. It's also going to trine your ascendant and Uranus on your ascendant. So it's going to also teach you the ins and outs of like business legality and like what you can and cannot do, or a mentor who might be kind of opening up your mind and getting you to think about new ways of doing things, and new business ventures potentially. But legality seems to be a big theme here, especially because Uranus is the ruler of your whole sign 10th. So I think that it's important for you to really know what you can, what you cannot do. It might also be a good idea for you to either record or take notes. Hopefully this might be like a thing that you can do that. So that way you can refresh and go over some of this information. But overall, I see it being very beneficial, both because it's going to make trines to your 1st house, but also because Mars is going retrograde in your 2nd, and you're trying to find new ways to kind of like apply yourself, and you're learning more about wheeling and dealing and making money. And when Mars comes into conjunction with Mercury and Jupiter, once it's direct, I can see that you're applying some of this information and knowledge and trying to find ways to be able to do business right around the mid-February period. And it can materialize as you having some of your first sales or transactions right around mid-February through March, which could drum up some more money. Now, one thing that I would take into consideration, you've kind of been in this for a little while, Pluto, which rules 7th house, other people, has been going through Capricorn in your 10th house, and it's been coming into an opposition with Venus in the 4th. So to me, Pluto can be what's one man's trash is another man's treasure. So just thinking of like, you know, I don't know what exactly you're doing with this Craigslist thing, but if you're like kind of going like, okay, somebody has something they want to sell, or somebody has something they want to get rid of, and I broker the deal, or I'm buying stuff and reselling it, especially when it comes to like business transactions, if it's coming to like home goods, things relating to home businesses, estate sales, things like that. That's very Pluto in opposition to Venus. I think that that's a very important transit because it tells me that there's something changing with you emotionally in regards to how you feel about the business that you're doing. I would really encourage you to be careful doing business from home or having people meeting you in your home or at your home. I would say like it's probably a good idea to meet in public or meet in other places. It's not going to be anywhere near your home. It's just food for thought. This will become even more important when the North and the South node move to Aries and also Libra, and they start coming into a square with your natal Venus. So that's when you're really going to know some of the stuff that you've been learning, if it's going to be something that you're going to continue to consistently keep doing. So I know this is moving slow, sorry, but the North and the South node looks like they're going to both move to around 29 degrees in July, and it'll square Pluto. So you're looking to make a total change in terms of what you're doing professionally by summer of next year, and it's going to oppose Venus. So it's trying to get you out of your home, making changes in your home life. Maybe you're more focused on, growing your business so you feel like you can afford more, or maybe you can start thinking about buying a home or putting money away. But the long and short is like I do see it being a good thing. I think that a Mercury retrograde in the 9th house is a wonderful time to change your philosophy about work and be learning something new. But I would really advise you to just make sure that everything that you're doing is legal, and also that you're realizing that it's going to be a process of you having to kind of apply yourself and seeing all the various ways that this can work. The 6th house also is about busyness or busy work. So it might also be a situation where you're realizing as a result of some of these transits that the things that you're learning in this course can apply to a multitude of different types of transactions or different types of business. And it can also be about like the service industry or odd gigs and other things that you're getting paid to do like a one-off thing. Eventually, it might push you in the direction of feeling like you might actually have to hire somebody to kind of help you with this. Just watch out for like accidents or anything legal, because the 6th house can be about legal stuff. So make sure that you're doing your research and that everything you're doing is legal in terms of the transactions that you're going to be doing. But otherwise, I actually see it being quite positive because I'm looking at Saturn continuing to move through Pisces next year and it's trining your sun. So I do see that as possibly trying to start a business that you're doing locally or some kind of online business where you're transacting or you're working with people in your local community. Do you mind me asking like how that works? The middleman, so are you like helping people post things and sell things and negotiating deals? How exactly does that work? Jupiter coming into conjunction with your ascendant next year also, of other people's money. It's like you're making money because you're advertising and selling and like trying to do things for other people. So that's another way that I could see this really kind of amplifying. But until Mars goes direct in your second house, there is a sense of like having to work with other people and like learning new techniques before you really start seeing the money kind of come in. So you won't really be applying yourself in some of this stuff until about February going into March, and then you can actually really see what it is that you can do, right? Oh, building websites. Okay, cool. Yeah. So that's fine. I mean, that's really great. I would just say like don't shortchange yourself, you know? So I think that, you know, something about the Mars retrograde in the second is like you can't shortchange yourself. You can't undercharge, right? And Mars going retrograde there is going to feel like it's more challenging to make money, but it'll pay off whatever it is that you're learning, because it might be also about marketing yourself. And the Mercury retrograde in your 10th is about restructuring what's going on business-wise. So if you're going to like launch something, you really need to wait until Mercury is direct in your 12th house. But I would say when Mercury is direct and it's coming into conjunction with Saturn, you're ready to take some of that and put it into action. And I would say like a really great time to possibly consider launching something, maybe when Mercury's on your midheaven and it's coming into a sextile with Neptune. So sometime around early February, right? Can be a better time to kind of launch something. So you really want to use that Mercury retrograde as an opportunity to really restructure something about work. But as a Taurus rising, just whole sign wise, Pluto going into Aquarius is really amazing, because it's going to be about a huge, profound shift in regards to what's going on with your work. And really coming into a personal power period. And Pluto rules your 7th house of other people you can work with. Just be prepared that there can be some intense people you can go back and forth with. But I think it's a good move, honestly. Hopefully that was helpful for you. All right, so we've got Lashes, Marcelo, Stephanie, and then my other two ladies that are waiting with the super chat. Thank you guys for your patience. Okay, Lashes, happy birthday. Thank you for your patience. Okay. I sell lash strips, but next year I'm turning my company more into a cosmetic line. I want to lose weight and become more of an influencer on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. Do you mind me asking what city you currently live in? So you were born in Torrance, but what city do you live in? Natal Pisces rising. Okay. Long Beach. Okay. 10th house here. So annual perfection wise, it's your 10th house. So it's a big career year. And anytime planets are going through your 10th house or your 10th house lord is on the move, that's when you really want to pay attention. So let's look at your solar return. With you being a Jupiter-based chart, I mean, Sag in the 10th house, it's a good year. You're going to bring more attention to yourself. For sure. So here's your solar return chart. Cool. Pisces rising, Sag sun in the 9th house going into the 10th of advertising, sales, importing, and exporting. Jupiter being the chart ruler, Jupiter is in the late degrees of Pisces and it's sitting on your ascendant. So you can make the assumption that there's going to be more visibility, especially in February and March of 2023. And then again, that kind of coming full circle, right? So you want to think of like the 10th house as like the peak. So things might be really peaking for you closer to, you know, your birthday next year. So think about the long game, right? So the last time you had a 10th house year, I believe, is when you were 18. No, I take that back. When is the annual perfection year 10? I'm thinking of the 7th house. 21. So reflect on what was going on when you were 21, what changes you made in your career that year. More responsibility, right? And Jupiter rules your 10th house. So when planets go through your 10th house, which is like now, and when your 10th house lord is on the move, so like Jupiter is going to leave your first house and it's going to move into your second house whole sign, which is about being more entrepreneurial and how you're making money. Super positive. The thing is like you got all these planets at the top part of your chart, which is great for visibility, and it's in a square to Jupiter in your first and also Neptune. So this is about like how you're perceived and how you look. And so Neptune can be lighting, it can be filters, it can be anything in regards to you feeling like you have like angles or mirrors or like things that are about enhancing or making changes to your appearance. Part of me feels inclined to tell you, being a Sag Sun, you know, Jupiter being your chart ruler, and you've got a Jupiter on your first house, like the appearance of being bigger in a sense of visibility is there, but there can also be this like anxiety with Jupiter square Neptune and Neptune on your ascendant, where you're very hypercritical of like how you look or how you're perceived and how you're being seen. Because you're a Sag Sun and you got a Pisces rising, like there's always going to be this sense of having a bigger personality or appearing like a lot more visible. So you can be super hypercritical when it comes to just your appearance. And I would say like, don't let that affect you mentally, especially with Mercury square Neptune. It can make you feel crazy. Having Jupiter in your first house, obviously it's going to be there for a hot minute. So there can be a sense of like being more prone to wanting sugar, wanting sweetness. It's about getting bigger. But if you're traveling, if you're learning, if you're expanding and you're practicing joy and also moderation, there's ways to kind of curb that. I mean, part of me feels inclined to tell you like, who gives a fuck? Like if you're putting content out there that matters, your waist size and how you look really shouldn't be something that keeps you from being on the internet, right? Obviously, like YouTube can be the seventh circle of hell. Anytime people are making comments and stuff about your appearance, it can be like a thing. But with these squares, there can be a sense of you telling yourself you can't do something until you look a certain way. And it can have like a really harsh effect on your mental health. And from one person who's been through that to another, like there's never a good time if you're constantly putting yourself in a position of, I'll put myself on YouTube until I look a certain way or until people receive who I am. Like, who cares? Like, don't let that affect you. I also feel like as Jupiter sits on your ascendant, it's about becoming more wise. It's about becoming more sensitive. It's about becoming more aware. So I would say, you know, soaking, doing detoxes, if you want to add more C nutrients to your food, if you want to be opting to do like protein shakes and other things that are liquid for health, totally fine. But this is also like mind, body, spirit. So it's not just physical, it's also about your mental health. It's also about your spiritual health. Are you, doing your cleanses? Are you doing your salt soaks? Are you going and doing foot reflexology? Anything relating to hydration, also your mental health and taking care of your feet, that should be your focus this year. So foot reflexology can be your best friend. Foot soaks can be good, especially like those ionic foot baths, to just detox and cleanse. And like, I really feel like with Jupiter and Neptune on your ascendant, people are really going to be drawn to your knowledge and your information and your joy and your happiness and what you have to share with other people. So they're not going to see a big body. They're going to see somebody who's very intelligent, somebody who's very happy. They're going to notice your smile, right? With that Pisces rising Jupiter on the ascendant. They're going to notice your peace. So the more that you're kind of leaning into that, the easier it's going to be, I think, for you to kind of share with other people. But also this is like lighting and all kinds of other stuff. Like how most YouTubers look on YouTube is generally not what we look like in real life. Ask anybody who knows me in real life. There's makeup, there's contouring, there's lighting, there's all that stuff. So if you figure some of that stuff out, you may feel a little bit more better kind of, being on camera more regularly. And I would say give more of a fuck about your content and what you're creating and really knowing what you're doing rather than just trying to be a personality, because that's what's ultimately going to make things very difficult for you with this square. Okay, Venus and Mercury being in the 10th house, you might find that there's more clients, there's more visibility, there's more opportunities for relationships. You got the sun in the 9th, so you're learning things, you're traveling places, you're going places, and you've got Mars in opposition to your sun. So there is this emphasis in like, do I want to move? Maybe, you know, am I feeling like I need out of the house and I'm restless? Probably. So there can be some traveling kind of going on throughout this year as well. I would say know that the mutable months are going to produce changes for you, especially since this is mirroring your natal transits because you're a Pisces rising. So there's going to be this emphasis in like, okay, you know, how am I feeling physically and emotionally in February, March? That's your primary focus. What is my vision? What am I creating? You know, am I finding peace? Am I meditating? Fourth house, when you come into Gemini season next year, thinking more about, do I like where I'm living? Is it time to move? How am I feeling with my family? Is there some things going on in my private life that's interfering with me being able to focus on my career? You'll make those changes. When you get into Virgo season, more changes in regards to relationships and what's going on with who you're partnering with. A wonderful time for collaborations, brand deals, things where you're, you know, doing collaborations with other people, and it can also be more relationship oriented. And it's all leading to that climax when you come to your birthday, and when planets are going through your 10th house, which is going to be right around your birthday next year. And just keep an eye on what's going on with Jupiter all year long, and know that it's not a race to get to where you want to go. You have to really kind of align your goals with being like, okay, by my birthday next year, I want to do X, Y, and Z. But get your emotions right, get everything right with how you're feeling, and start focusing more on how you're feeling rather than being so consumed with whether or not people are going to be receptive of you. And it's going to be a whole lot easier. Take a look at what's going on in your life right now, because this is a snapshot of your solar return at your birthday. So whatever's going on yesterday, today, tomorrow, even into the full moon, because that full moon is going to be conjunct your Mars in this fourth house. So what's changing with you emotionally and what you're finally willing to kind of let go of, especially when it comes to things in your home or stuff in regards to your spending habits, or just some stuff that's going on with your family. You might feel like you need to move or you need to reorganize some things. So I'd say take a look at your house also and start asking yourself what needs to change emotionally within your private space to facilitate being able to kind of make some of these goals come full circle. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful. Happy birthday to you, and definitely look forward to seeing what you're putting out there. It is always a invigorating process, like building all of that stuff, you know? So it's a lot having to do the social media and the content and all of those things, but I think it's definitely going to be big for you in the long term, especially the second half of this next year. You're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your birthday. Thanks for spending it with us. All right, so we have got, is this one in here? Okay, so I got to plug a couple people in here really quick. So let's see. Oh no, I think I do have this one in here. Where is it? So we've got Marcelo. Am I saying that correctly? Let me plug you in here. 1973. But it looks like K is your first initial. I'm just going to put that just to make it easier. January 9th, 73. 10:28 a.m. All right, so there we go. So this is for you. There we go. Hi. Gemini, third house. Main concern is my career. Will I move up or should I go on my own with my talents? Good question. So you've got a Pisces rising, Pisces moon, and your sun is in Capricorn. And you've got Mars going retrograde through your third house. Yes, that's your concern. And it's all kind of in some funky angles to your natal Mars and Venus. So Jupiter rules your 10th house. And so here's what's kind of cool is Jupiter's sitting on your ascendant right now. And it's about optimism and faith and belief of where your life is going, right? So it's coming into a square with your Venus, and it's also your midheaven, which is your talents, what you have to offer, what you can create, what you can put out there. Part of me feels inclined to tell you that what is so evident about your astrology is that you're focusing on being like, I want to be more self-sustainable. I want to be able to do more, bring more in, especially in terms of your talents, because the North Node's in your second house, and you're going to see that Jupiter is coming into your second house, and you can literally be making more money with your talent, with your art, all of those things. It looks like you're really starting to make that segue closer to about April, May of 2023. Now, I'll show you why I say that. So first, we got to wait till Jupiter gets into Taurus. So that's going to be happening for you right around, the end of May of 2023. Jupiter enters Taurus. The sun's in your second house, and then we start seeing Jupiter coming closer and closer to Uranus. So it tells me working in private, having your own space, being able to take your creativity, your vision, your art, whatever, putting it full circle. Also, you're seeing Saturn getting closer and closer to your natal moon. So it tells me that you're going to be wanting to do more work by yourself in private. And Saturn is going to start coming into a square with your natal Saturn. So it seems like both for your mental health, but also because you're going to feel like you have more privacy and more control over what you're doing. The goal is to be able to kind of go more in that direction as you get closer to this next year. The challenge right now is that Neptune is sitting on your ascendant. So it makes you kind of idealistic and also feeling sometimes like a victim or victimized. And it's in a square to Neptune. So, your natal Venus. So you seem to be sensitive about the fact that you're doing work that doesn't feel fulfilling, or you're doing work that's making other people look good, and you're not getting totally paid what you feel like is fair or worthy for some of the output that you're creating with some of your work, right? Venus is the ruler of your second house, Placidus, and Jupiter is the ruler of your 10th. So I feel like right now you have a vision, you have a dream for some of the things that you can be doing yourself, but it does feel a little overwhelming and out of reach currently because of the Mars retrograde. So emotionally you can be feeling like all over the place at the current moment, especially with Mars going retrograde in conjunction with Saturn. So I feel like now is a really good time to start thinking about, do you need to be communicating, expressing your feelings better, right? Is there a need to do that? If you are doing work with people, do you need to renegotiate things and be looking also at contracts? B, is a good idea to be thinking about how you can be starting the process of streamlining your own business and thinking about creating social media, creating a website, putting something together in the midst of the the Mars retrograde over your Saturn, and finding ways to be able to kind of invest in your talents. And that full moon is going to be on your Saturn and Mars. So this is about your goals. So I would advise you during the full moon on the 7th to write all your goals down, really focus on what it is that you're going to be completing between now and the time that Mars comes back to your natal Saturn. Be working behind the scenes and putting everything together to start figuring out how you can possibly create a website or a new email address or ways of being able to drum up business. So that way, when you get to about mid-February, you feel like it's ready to go. So you've got about 2 months here that you can really work with this, that you can get everything ready. And probably right around the time that Mars is conjunct Saturn, it's also coming into a trine with the sun. So that'll be in February. You can wait if you want also until the eclipse that's going to be happening in April. But for a Pisces rising, the eclipse in the second house is feeling like you're finally validated and you're making the money that you need to from some of the things that you're working on personally, and that things are coming full circle. So February through April is really when I see that turning point. But Neptune is in like a really tight angle right now to your natal Venus. So you have to be feeling like you're being paid your worth, and you have to be feeling like your talents are being acknowledged and that you're kind of working in the job that feels like it's your purpose. Mercury will go retrograde, right? And that's about your feelings over your natal Jupiter and your sun and your North Node. So something else that I would recommend over this next month-long period is getting affiliated, joining like a professional organization, maybe joining like a networking group, connecting with like-minded people who might be independent or might be entrepreneurs, reconnecting with friends who are also self-employed or people who may have connections that can really help you, because that retrograde is so supportive. It's going to be making trines to the North Node and Uranus in your second house. At the very least, you're going to spend time with friends and people who are going to remind you how talented you are, how capable you are. They may say, hey, I've got somebody I want to introduce you to who can kind of really help you grow. and really start believing in some of the work that you're doing and feeling like you have the opportunity to drum up some business or even some clients or make some connections with some people who can really help you grow your professional life. That's a really good Mercury retrograde for you. I cannot say that enough. So I'm wondering, like, do you need to join a professional association or just be getting into the habit of networking more or making connections online to people who might be kind of better situated so you can start kind of really reevaluating what your goals are and setting the stage for getting working behind the scenes. So between February and April, you have new ways of being able to feel good about your talents and also making more money. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful and that makes sense. I would go and learn about Neptune coming into a square with your natal Venus, because that's what's going to be happening over these next couple of years. Saturn will join as well. So you're going to need to feel like you're doing something that is for you personally, that's a part of your vision. Meditation, prayer, reflection, that can be so helpful for you right now. But to me, it looks like with Jupiter direct and Neptune out direct, it's becoming clear like what it is that you're wanting to create. Hopefully that's helpful. We got Stephanie Todman and Wendy. Are you still there? You still what you're reading? I see your message got retracted, so hopefully you're still there. Wendy and let's see, Lisa. So you guys are next. Wendy, let me know if you're still there. I'm glad that was helpful. Good luck. Okay, so let's see. We got Stephanie Todman. Are you in here? No, but I can plug you in. Let me plug you in here really quick. Sorry. 38.3. $12.57. Okay, Steph, 6:30, 83, 12:57 p.m. Brooklyn. Libra rising, Moon in Pisces, Sun in Cancer. Just started an assistant editor training program. I want to know if I will have consistent work once I'm placed at my new job. Good question. All right, so Mars retrograde in your 9th over your natal Mercury and your natal North Node. So awesome, because there is a sense of you being like, I'm going back, I'm doing some kind of training, I'm learning something, and it's all in a square to Jupiter and Neptune. So there's a sense of you being like, is this going to pay off? Is this going to be something that's going to guarantee that's going to give me a job? Getting a job is more going to be related to the moon, and making money is more going to be related to Mars. So honestly, let's look at what's going on right now. Mars going retrograde in your 9th house is reevaluating your belief system about money and how you can make money and how that can change as a result of what you're learning. So it's good that you're in this program. Mars is also in a trine to Saturn. So it's something that feels more creative, more authentic, something that's also going to provide you with more security. There's a lot of room for big question marks right now, right? When you have planets in Sagittarius in the 3rd, it's what you're thinking, what you're learning. When you have planets that are in the 9th house, it's what you believe. And the squares to Neptune in the 6th house is it all going to work out, right? But the key here is that Jupiter and Neptune are the focal point, which means you got to keep the faith, right? So I'm looking at Saturn coming into a trine with Mercury. I'm also looking at Mars that's going to come back into conjunction with your North Node. And I feel like you're going to look around in like March, April, and you're going to realize that it was really beneficial that you did this program. I don't know when it starts. I don't know when it ends, but I just feel like this is going to be something that you're doing into the spring. When can hard work pay off? Well, Saturn going into Pisces 6th house can definitely be about having work and dedication paying off. I'm looking at Mars going into Cancer in April, coming into a trine with Saturn, making me feel like if you're looking for a job, I mean, literally, I mean, you're either working when Saturn goes into your 6th house, and that'll be in March, or you're actually finding that you're really getting into the groove and you've really been glad that you've made the change in the transformation once Mars is sitting on your sun and it's in a trine to Saturn. So that's about the first half of April. Okay, so we'll be done the first week in January. Cool. So know that there's still a Mercury retrograde going on. It doesn't mean that you can't find a job then, but Mercury will be retrograde in opposition to your 10th house sun. So I feel like this is about you kind of feeling it out. If you're looking for actually getting picked up for work, I would say your best bet is going to be the second half of February, right after you have that new moon, let's see, in Pisces. So from about the 19th through the better part of mid-March, it's a really good time for work because planets are going to be in your 6th house of work. They're going to be coming into trines with your sun, and you're going to have Mars coming into your 10th house. So I do feel confident that you've got 1, 2, 3 of the transits that you generally have when you have some kind of new job that's brewing. Equally, you're going to start seeing Jupiter come into your 7th house, and it's going to start squaring your sun. So it's not a matter of will there be work. It's going to be you being like, okay, am I getting set up and aligned with like the right person, right? So assistant editor training. I mean, Jupiter is literally about clients in your 7th. It can also be, because it's the ruler of the 3rd, things that people are writing. It could also mean that there's an overabundance of people and that you're kind of doing it remotely or you're working from home and you're dealing with like several different people at one time. I don't think there's going to be a lack of work. Let me put it that way. And I'm also looking at the transits that are going to be happening with your natal moon, which is really the primary indicator that you're going to be working your ass off, because Saturn's going to come into conjunction with your moon, which is the ruler of your 10th house of career, and it's going to start trining your sun. Yeah, remote work, yeah, definitely, but there can be a lot of it. And you're still learning over these next 2 or 3 years with Jupiter and Neptune in your 6th, okay, that there is some stuff that's worth killing yourself for and some stuff that's not. So there can be a sense of there being too much work and you not knowing where there's bleed over, right? Because Saturn and Neptune are going to square your Mercury, 12th house lord, and it's going to square your Neptune, 6th house lord. It tells me that you can't be overworking. Also, vision comes up for me. So I'm wondering, like, are you staring at screens a lot? Are you working long hours? Are you, using sleepy eyes? Do you start to have eye strain? Really, really hear me on this. You need to pay attention, especially because you've got both the North Node and Mercury within like the Pleiades. So that does kind of indicate you can have some eye related issues as Neptune and Saturn are coming into a square with your Mercury. So I don't know, blue light protectors, bigger screens, making sure things are well lit. Like your vision really needs to be watched over the next 2 years, as does your health and your work habits in general. Like having Saturn and Neptune come into a T-square with your 3rd and your 9th house tells me that you need a break sometimes from work. Work is going to be there. You can leave and you can come back and there's still going to be work there. So you need time to kind of sleep and rest more, throughout the day sometimes. That's part of Neptune in the 6th. But also your work habits. So working in isolation, if you're not working around other people, is that having an effect on you mentally? Is that having an effect on you spiritually? Do you feel like you need to physically leave the house, go and do things, go to a gym, right? Or just have breaks in your schedule where you can travel, or you're having time that it feels more inspirational or it's feeling more creative. So you're not getting lost in the monotonous day-to-day routine, which can feel like Groundhog's Day. Just food for thought. Especially because you have your South Node conjunct Neptune. So there can be this sense of just mentally things just become really overbearing. And then the North Node in the 9th house conjunct Mercury, literally going back to school, learning more about working with people who are writers and people who are trying to get published. I really love that the Jupiter square prompted you to want to go and learn more so you can really kind of perfect your craft or get into something that can really help people. And I feel like perhaps maybe, obviously, you may not have a say in the types of people that you're working with, but you may opt to be working remotely, and you may be opting to work with people also who are more, Piscean. So it could possibly be people who are teaching metaphysics, or they're writing stuff in regards to fantasy, or it's stuff in regards to health and wellness. Any of these things might kind of pique your interest, and these might be the types of people that you're wanting to work with more, because it's going to be you feeling like you're giving back and you're working with people who are trying to help others, if that makes sense. stuff that's just going to be like more like Piscean in general. So you're going to be more drawn to kind of like metaphysical things and like working with healers or working with people who have spiritual interests. It's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. But I definitely think it's going to pay off. I would just say over these next 2 years, having a routine where there's better mind, body, spirit balance is really, really, really important for you moving forward. I have a bigger screen and blue light glasses. Okay. Still, it'll take maybe about 2 years and you'll start to see the effects, you know? And the moon, I can't remember if it's I want to say for a woman, I want to say it's your right eye or your left eye. I'll post something in the comments afterwards. I'll go through my reference book, but the moon is one of the 2 eyes, and I want to say for a woman, it's going to be your left eye. So being that Saturn's coming into conjunction with your moon at a 6, it's definitely going to be something in relation to the vision in one of your eyes being a little bit different. But Saturn will go back and forth over that next year. So just pay attention if one's kind of acting up. Also, Saturn coming into conjunction with your moon, which really belongs whole sign to your 6th. It's about taking breaks, right? Being like, I can't work for 8 hours straight. Taking breaks, resting, having a meal. You might feel like it makes sense to like do, you know, things that are going to be more routine throughout the day. So you take a break, you eat lunch, you fold laundry, you put laundry away. It's something that's going to help you feel productive, but also be doing something regularly. So it's kind of grounding your energy out. So you're breaking your schedule up a little bit better. Ah, there you go. Yeah, it probably is your right eye, because I feel like the moon for women is the receptive side. So yeah, one of them you will see is acting differently in this next year. And it's just part of the transit, unfortunately. You might start seeing like more floaters and stuff too. You know, there might be liquids or drops or things that you can use, or there's going to be a change in a screen. But during the transits in the spring, like when Saturn comes into conjunction with your moon and planets go through Pisces, might be a good time for an eye exam, just to have that looked at, and then monitor it all year as Saturn goes retrograde. But yeah, I definitely think it's a good move for you. And I'm really excited to see Saturn come into a square with Jupiter and Uranus, because it's also pushing you to really lean on your natural talents, right? Hopefully that's helpful, and good job wrapping that up. That was what you were supposed to do with the Mars retrograde. Well done. Let's see, we got anybody else? I do not see that. It looks like we lost Wendy, but that's okay. I'll send Wendy. Wendy, if you're watching this, I will send you an audio. I'll send you an email because I have your chart. And I know that you're not here, so I will send you an email and see if you want me to answer your question, because I lost your question. I don't even know what to answer for you. So if you watched this long, I apologize, but I promise you, because you sent the super chat, I'll send you an email so we can either do your reading via email, or I can give you a credit and I can cut you next week. So hopefully you didn't watch this all the way through, hoping to see what I have to say, because I don't even know what I would tell you. And then yes, we also have there we go. Let's plug this in. And lease. This is for $325.58. $3:27 p.m. Bridgeport, Connecticut. Thank you for your patience in waiting for us. Here we go. Your question was, I wish to know about my love life, also what to focus on spiritually. Astrology, cards, gems, trying to find all kinds of things throughout my life. Good question. Night owl, thank you for waiting. So I've got you here, Virgo rising, your sun is in Aries, and your moon is in Gemini. Good question. So a couple things here. Let's go back to that. Want to know about your love life and what to focus on spiritually. Saturn's coming into conjunction with your Venus again. So that's about kind of clearing out stuff in regards to your love life. So now that that's moving away and it's coming off of your Chiron, things get a little bit better. A really strong Neptune transit is going to make changes in your love life, but for Virgo rising right now, planets in your 4th house, Neptune squares in your 7th, and then Mars retrograde in your 10th. Everything's up for reevaluation. Relationships, potential work, you know, your interests, where you're living, that's all changing. You're going to see more stability in terms of relationships and things changing like that when you have Saturn going to Pisces and you have Jupiter coming in conjunction with your sun, because Saturn's having you get serious about relationships this whole next year. And Jupiter sitting on your sun as you're willing to open up to a new relationship and intimacy. So Jupiter hits your sun February. Saturn comes into your 7th house, and that's going to be in April. And it'll be in and out of your 7th house descendant really all year. Think back to like 1994-ish. That was the last time Saturn went through this part of your chart. So you can kind of reflect on what was going on in relationships then. It's really interesting because it's going to come out of your 6th house where there's been a lot of clearing and focusing on health and routine and service. It's going to oppose Pluto in your 1st house, which means you're coming out of your comfort zone and you're more willing to communicate and connect with other people. So next year is a great relationship year with Saturn in your 7th. Here's the deal though. It's going to square your moon. So it's going to be like you having to learn to define relationships more so based off of friendships, because the moon rules your 11th house. It can mean that friends are setting you up with people. It means that you're just out there looking for, you know, a friendship, and then you're feeling it out and seeing how that kind of goes before you make a commitment. So Saturn square the moon does make it more difficult to communicate and express your feelings. So you had a divorce then. Okay. So if you're single now, then it can be much smoother this time around. You know, Saturn through Pisces for you is really complex because it's going to square your moon, so it affects your emotions in your home. It also opposes Pluto, so it brings up some profound change. This is a lot easier if you're single right now, or if you're not in a serious committed relationship. But as Saturn enters into your 7th, it might open you up to having a more serious relationship again. And your 2nd marriage is always your 9th house. So you've got eclipses in your 9th house. Jupiter's going to go into your 9th house. Saturn's going to go into your 7th house. Like, relationships are definitely going to be a lot easier. And you're having your reverse nodal return. So actually, I would encourage you to continue learning and to be open to traveling. And that's what's most likely going to open up meeting people, especially next spring through next summer. Shifting gears a little bit in terms of like your area of focus. Really cool transit. You've got Jupiter that's going into your 8th house. So wanting to learn more about intuition and the occult. Things in regards to metaphysics, spirituality, life after death, all that stuff, especially because Jupiter rules your 4th house, which is about intuition. So as Jupiter comes into your 8th, it's coming into contact with Lilith and also your sun. So this is about awakening real, raw, natural femininity. So it can be about awakening your sexual feelings. It can be about awakening and being more so open to witchy things. In the sign of Aries, it's about what's more natural or kind of like animalistic, things that involve blood, things that also involve, you know, life after death, or being able to get more interested in like mysticism or magic, that kind of stuff. But Jupiter coming into conjunction tells me that you're going to be trying to open up your intuition. And the sun is the ruler of the 12th. So you're also trying to access past life information, learning about dream recall, doing some kind of more like meditation or even like shamanic work might be interesting for you. When it comes to tapping into your intuition, Jupiter is going to come into conjunction with Mercury. And to me, it seems like there's an emphasis in you feeling like you can master something. So maybe you'll take a course or you'll pick up a book or something when Jupiter is conjunct Mercury and you're wanting to learn a form of divination. Mercury in Aries is something you can do on your own, and it can be about cards. It can be about anything in regards to being able to prophesize. Now, specifically, the dispositor of your Mercury, or the ruler of your Mercury, is Mars. And you got Mars in Aquarius in the 6th. So I think that you would have a real interest in astrology for timing purposes. Like, you might have an interest in learning astrology. You may also be prone to being inclined to learn more about health and astrology, or timing, especially in regards to big life changes and transitions, or even death. As much as I hate to say that, but Jupiter's going through your 8th house, you're going to have a little bit more of like a morbid curiosity. So you might start studying like death charts of celebrities or, you know, people when they go through huge life changes, and you'll become very interested in like understanding how and when that worked, especially in regards to timing. If it's not that, then it's going to be learning more about astrology and timing in regards to health. So that might be something that interests you. When to plan certain surgical procedures, when people might make health changes or dietary changes, or learning about how people might be more predisposed to health-related illness, and how they can prevent it or how they can cure things. Death and rebirth too, sure. I mean, it's kind of one and the same. But I think Jupiter coming into conjunction with Mercury is you're going to have a precognitive feeling, or you're tapping into like when changes or transformation is coming. And it's all about how you're learning about the rebirth process and when something ends, that something new begins. So I would say, like, especially Aries is something very primal, and Jupiter is about what is more spiritual. So like you might want to pick up the Tibetan Book of the Dead, because Jupiter is very kind of like Eastern modalities. So it might interest you to learn more about the bardo and like where the soul goes and what happens after death. And it might really influence the way that you look at changes in your own life, or like when things come to an end. Very important, just considering the fact that Jupiter is going to be in your 8th house, enhancing this energy, and you're going to have eclipses going through your 8th house, which is going to be bringing these changes and transformations on in general. Many, many, many changes for Virgo risings. And in your case, it's going to be a total rework of the ego, because your sun is in that house. And you might start meeting some very significant, very powerful kind of like magical men, medicine healers, shamanic people. But it's also going to have you doing a deep dive over the next 2 years into your own roots, your own lineage, and also things in regards to your relationship with letting go of certain solar figures, bosses, husbands, people from the past, just really significant men in your life in general. So that's going to be a theme. You can get the show on the road and start doing that next year. Well, Jupiter says, hey, it's good to learn about this. You can wait until the eclipses are happening, which I wouldn't recommend doing. I would say go in the direction where Jupiter is trying to lead you now. Or you can really wait until Saturn and Neptune are coming into conjunction with your sun. But I can see a long period from 2023 to 2026 where you're learning about the importance of regeneration and learning to let go and what you gain through change and transformation. So I think you're going to want to learn a lot about grief. I think you're going to want to learn a lot about Tantra, intimacy, and also how you can kind of come together with other people, and how there can be rebirths in relationships, and learning to be more open and not afraid of intimacy. That seems to be a big theme here as well. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Big changes on the horizon in regards to relationships. And obviously just really kind of awakening to, you know, what's going on with your intuition. Feeling stifled with where you're living. I think a lot of that Saturn coming into a square with your moon and an opposition to Pluto. When you have a really strong Mars transit, you'll see an opportunity to move. But I'm anticipating that's not going to happen for a little bit. So until Mars or Pluto make some changes, you know, be open to looking at relationships in other places. Saturn in opposition to Pluto literally means you can meet people who are in different cities, which could prompt the opportunity for you to meet a different person and consider possibly relocating. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you. That's all for me this evening. It looks like I think I've worked through my list. I got everybody. Once again, if I miss anybody, let me know, but I don't think so. Those of you guys who stayed until the end, you guys are awesome. Those of you guys who donated, thank you by your likes, your comments, your shares. I got a new video coming out for you guys tomorrow. We're going to talk all about Venus and Mercury going through Capricorn, what it means, where it's bringing a little bit more structure and commitment in each and every one of our charts. That'll be out in the morning. I'll be back next week. We're going to be doing readings on Saturday at 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. It'll be tarot. I'll put that link out early. Hopefully it's a good full moon for you guys. If you haven't seen that video, I've got that out too. If you like my content and if you want to schedule a reading with me, click my links below. You can go to my website and, oh, there she is. There's Wendy. Okay, Wendy, I've got your info. Let's do your reading. I was about to sign off and you got me. What was your question? I was like, man, I gotta send her an email. Let me pull you up here. I did not hear from you, but I guess you're here. July 13th. I got you. Love, you got it. You got in there just in time. Okay, so Wendy has questions about love. Well, right on time. Venus is coming into your 7th house and you're meeting with your astrologer, so perfect timing. Venus does bring love and sweetness, but the problem is that it's in a square to Neptune and it's also in an opposition to Mars. So this is that period where there's a lot of like, let's see who shows up for you. Venus in Sag is going to be very action-packed, right? And also for Cancer, right, in general, the retrograde that's going to be in Capricorn, it's about relationship changes. Venus and also Mercury is about how we're talking about having more commitment and seriousness in relationships. And it's also about values. So there can be much more of an emphasis in getting serious with clients, negotiating financial deals, but also really making sure that if people say that they're in it, that they're showing you intimacy, transparency, and security. This is going to be such an important theme because you've got Venus that's going to hit your moon, which is great for relationships, especially the second half of December. And then you're going to have Mercury go retrograde in conjunction to Venus. And this is about people possibly from the past coming back and telling you about how they're feeling. I mean, it's not just because it's the holidays, okay? We've had 2 or 3 years where we have had full moons around Christmas, Venus retrogrades, Mercury Kazimis. The last few Christmases have been like definitely peppered with the ghost of exes past. We've got one more year where this is going to be happening. Really pay attention to like the 22nd, really through the new year, because there can be people reaching out and calling you. Not because they're lonely, because Mercury is doing its thing where it's retrograding over Pluto and also over your moon. So it's a lot of like, will this person let me go, right? Are they making contact and talking, just business with me and going back and forth with me about that stuff? Maybe. Intuitively, I feel inclined to tell you that part of what's going on here is like, you're supposed to be asking yourself, can I trust this? There's a transformation of relationships going on, 8th house to your sun. There's a transformation of your joint resources going on. It can be about people finally coming through and paying you, but it can also be about people saying, hey, I've been scared. I was afraid to show up. I'm willing to make a change. Let me show you that I can make this change. You're not going to know until the Mercury Kazemi happens, whether or not, there is a path forward. So like everything is really up in the air from the end of January until you have this Kazemi around the 6th. Then the sun and the moon come together with the Mercury retrograde. So that's amazing because you're going to kind of be like, okay, what I thought I was feeling all along, I finally got confirmation. I got confirmation in a tarot reading. I got confirmation in a conversation. That person did call me and apologize and say that they were afraid of X, Y, and Z. The 8th house is about change. So there can be this sense finally of, getting serious about going back and forth with somebody and saying, hey, don't just tell me about it, like actually be about it. That seems to be really important. And then you're going to see that Venus is going to come into conjunction with Saturn. Obviously, this is going into January, but that's important because it's going to trine your ascendant. So whatever's happening pretty much throughout Christmas until the 3rd week of January is stabilizing relationships, stabilizing your resources, stabilizing your business. There's going to be something that is going to be happening here. And that Mercury retrograde in opposition to your sun is a lot of like, what is it that they want? Yeah, something is about to happen. But Mars retrograde over your Jupiter and in your 12th house on your north node is like, listen, don't say much. Keep your cards really close to your chest. Be very careful with, what you're willing to say. You don't have to say a lot. There can be a sense of you just listening and hearing or paying attention to kind of like, people's actions rather than their words. And making sure that they're actually going to show up the way that they're telling you that they're going to show up. So whether it's somebody who tells you that they're going to be giving you a check, or if it's somebody telling you that they really love you, you're really wanting to make sure, okay, let's see if they come through. I can't push them. I can't make them do that. I have to really, stay on my side of the lane and let other people kind of meet me. And it's about people having to get outside of their comfort zone. Right? So especially if you're having like a blend between like relationships and money, I would be very careful there because there can be a sense of people coming back around because you're doing business, but really they're just looking for another reason to communicate and go back and forth with you, if that makes sense, And I would be like, okay, cut to the chase. Like if this is about work, then keep it about work. Don't be finding ways to stay in contact with me just, because you're wanting to still kind of keep tabs on me. You'll realize that as soon as Saturn's coming into your 10th house, you're not really looking to kind of screw around. You're going to be like, if it's business, and that's it. And then Saturn's going to move into your 10th house, especially in the new year. And it's going to start squaring your south node and your north node. So it's all business moving forward. You're not going to be interested in having a blending of relationships and also work. And then the finale is going to be when Saturn is sitting in your 10th house. Your second Saturn return is coming, you know? So that's a big one. That's going to be happening closer to 2024. So all of that, all roads are leading to you feeling like work is work, relationships are relationships. If I'm in one, it's public. I'm not going to kind of be in limbo land anymore. So this is the last stop before you have Pluto leave your 8th house, where there's secrets and money and work and everything that's intertwined. Pluto is getting ready to move into Aquarius, your 9th house, where you're feeling like you can be out in the open and you can consider partnership and collaboration and traveling with another person in the bigger picture. You're not looking to kind of be behind the scenes with anybody any longer. That Mercury retrograde is going to be very telling because it's in your 8th house, which is going to be about the truth coming out, because it's 7th house to your sun, which is about relationships, and because it's on your moon. So people either come correct and they tell you what's up or not, but regardless, it's about watching what they say and not feeling like you're the one who's going to be pushing the river, right? So very telling right around the end of the year. It's all going to sextile Saturn too, so it's great. Let other people follow you, come to you, right? Mars retrograde in your 12th is just kind of watch what's happening, meditate, stay grounded, don't let other people distract you. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Wendy. It's always good to see you and to check in with you. I appreciate it. And once again, to everybody who stayed to the end, thank you guys for staying. It was nice to see you. Thank you for spending your Saturday with me. I'll be back next week. I have more content coming out. I'm putting together a Mercury retrograde video for you guys next week so we can talk about that, because it's the end of the year and so many things are happening. So the energy feels kind of wild, but it'll get easier about mid-month. All right, so enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I hope you guys have a good one. Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you tomorrow morning early with that new video for Astro Weather. You want to book a reading with me? Click my links below. You can also pick up my Astro 2023 calendar that is out. We've got astrology classes that are out too that are going to start live in January. And I would be happy to have you join me. So I will see you guys there. Otherwise, take care and enjoy the rest of the night.